there's many people around the world who started to teach divine truth principles, like who we've met in the past. Well, like Denny Johnson's one of those, right? We've met him in the past. I've given him a whole heap of feedback, none of which he's listened to or respected. And he still goes around teaching divine truth principles.
Telling people
it's divine truth.
Sending the one with the eye.
Yeah. Goes around telling everyone it's divine truth he's teaching and rah. Has nothing to do with us. He has nothing to do with us. Every time he tries to contact us, we either don't reply or we say, Denny, we've already talked to you about these things. We don't agree with what you're doing. And he keeps doing them. So what does that indicate?
They want to spread lies about divine truth, so that then when people hear you, they either don't believe you because they've been educated wrongly, or they can get all angry about it and enraged, so they don't want to hear as well.
That's right.
And they're probably trying to influence as many people, and in error, they could also not believe that yours is the truth and Denny is actually saying the truth. So there's a lot of room for murkiness.
Well, that's true. Tris?
I've found in the past to do two things. One is they like to use you as I am an expert on divine truth because Jesus came for me, because Jesus let me kind of like set this up. And the other one is a feeling from spirits, it seems, that anyone who gets triggered by what is said by divine truth, they'll take along for a ride with other information.
Yep, so looking at the second thing, what's that driven by? What did you originally want when you first heard divine truth? What was your motivation?
To get out of some pain.
Yeah?
You get out of pain.
Get out of personal pain?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Selfish motivation, is it not?
Yeah.
Okay. Selfish motivations drive addictions, do they not?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what's the addiction? So what addictions do you want with a teacher? What do you want the teacher to do for you?
When you reassurance.
Want to provide constant reassurance, right? So Mary and I haven't outputted anything online for probably 5 years. Does that give you much reassurance?
No. Do you get much constant input?
From me? No. Do you get sort of the... See, people want a guru. What does a guru do? Gives a person constant emotional reassurance, gives a person constant emotional contact, gives a person constant praise when, or pull down, doesn't matter, as long as it's constant. As long as it's regular, right? And it makes you feel like you're loved. And this is one of the false definitions of love you have, right? Is that if somebody is dealing with you constantly, then it means they care about you, right? But it also can mean they want to use you. Can't it?
Yep.
And most people can't tell the difference between somebody caring for them and somebody using them. So what do? They go for the constant engagement. So someone like Denny, he has an addiction to share with people constantly because he's trying to avoid his own life. He doesn't want to deal with anything of his own life personally. So what he does is he goes around telling everybody else what they need to deal with their life. It's a great way for him to avoid his own life. Mary and I don't do that. We don't avoid our own life, right? But the average person wants to. And then they also want to be led by spirits to lead other people astray. And they also want addictions with people because they want to feel like they're good doing what they're doing and so forth. So there's a whole lot of things influencing these people who set themselves up as divine truth gurus, but who have either had very little to do with us, if anything at all, or they've had something to do with us and we've given them very strong feedback about what they need to do to change and they don't want to have anything to do with us again. But they still want their addictions met, right? And they still feel some level of attraction to the teachings. But what they do is they distort them and abuse them and turn them into something they're not. And then what are you left with? Well, you're left with your gurus again, who are trying to teach you a whole heap of things that are untrue in the guise of something that is true. Isn't that what Christianity is? A priesthood telling you what to do in the guise of it being true Christianity.
And being loved.
And so all of these people are basically setting up exactly the same as what the Christians in the first century and afterwards set up. That's what they're doing. And
so it's fundamentalism, kind of. Is that what it is? Where they put themselves in the place of God, kind of thing?
I don't know if you'd call it fundamentalism. It's I would call it manipulative distortion, basically, but that's what it is. So these kind of people are manipulating and distorting God's truth into being something they want it to be, so that they get their addictions met, so that they don't have to deal with their problems. It's quite bad, actually.
I can feel a lot of people feel like it's just too hard the way Jesus teaches it. You know, you need some help to get into your emotions. You need someone to sort of... It's like, you know, in the meetings that we have here regularly, Jesus is not like coaxing you into your feelings, is he? But if you remember in the beginning, especially lots of us who didn't have many emotions, you really wanted someone to hold your hand through the emotion and tell you, now you're getting it, this is it, and you're closer. And I think there's an attraction in people. And then if the person who wants to teach, quote-unquote, divine truth, also has an injury that's loving, or that they get to feel better about themselves by doing that with someone else or superior, or, you know, then you can see how it very easily happens. Like, oh, this Jesus guy is teaching this stuff, but all these emotions, that's very hard for everyone. And, you know, so I'll just set up a workshop that helps them to get into their stuff. Like, I remember it at the beginning. Some of you came to it, you know. Because my definition...
And I didn't agree with Mary doing it either.
No.
I told her that. So.
You gave me lots of good feedback. I learnt so much from the experience, and it was far less addictive, the workshop, than it was going to be, because Jesus had a lot of input. But it still wasn't something that you ever said you wanted to do, because it wasn't. And now
that's why I wasn't there doing it.
Yeah, very clearly the errors in it. But so I do understand how these things happen. But I also think that there's this big thing overseas that I notice when people are contacting us, where spirits have gotten into the mix with people who are doing this, who are sort of teaching or workshopping,
or having mediumship groups or whatever else.
Yep. And you can see how it happens, because if you're not getting truth, if you're not looking at yourself honestly, if you're not developing in your relationship with God, spirits will step in and try and, like lots of us have had to deal with that as well.
Yeah.
So you can so I just think it's a great opportunity going. But I think Jesus is right, like there might be a lot of people who don't want to know afterwards, but, you know, the sincere people will respond, won't they? Yeah.
The best thing Mary and I can do is make it clear to these people that what they're doing is completely wrong, and also not in harmony with God's truth either, even though they're saying it is. It's not. And that's the best thing we can do. But it's interesting that a person can listen to divine truth, so called, hear it from myself, and then have so much disrespect of myself and also of God, really, that they can distort the whole thing to suit themselves. It's just a very, very sad thing. And of course, every one of these people are setting themselves up as teachers. And the compensation for teachers when you do these kind of things is very, very bad. It's even worse than a murderer's compensation. Actually.
Why is that?
Will you think about why?
Murder just hurts maybe one person or family, maybe.
Yeah. How many people does a false teacher hurt?
Billions.
Thousands or millions. You know, billions even. Right. So you can see why the compensation is much, much worse. Yeah. Got to be very careful about setting yourself up as a teacher. You've got to make sure that you are actually teaching what is truth, or when it's not truth, you're making it very clear that it's just your personal opinion and not truth. Yeah. Which is, if you think about it, what I've done with you, right? Yeah.
And deal with your own stuff, your own addictions, my goodness.
Yeah. You know, the sad thing is there is a lot of very dark spirits getting involved with a lot of people who have heard divine truth in the past, and they are influencing those people to get into a much darker state than when we first met them. And they do it in the guise of having a relationship with God, but really these people are just having a relationship, a bad relationship with spirits, and it's very, very damaging, not only to God's truth on earth, but also to their own progress and their own lives in the future. Yeah, many of them are going to be absolutely shocked when they pass because of the principle of setting yourself up as a teacher, teaching false principles. Yeah.
Is that the same with all priests as well?
Yeah, very much so. Very much so. You know, if you look at every message in the Paget message where a priest had passed, even though he had some connection to God, he had to deal with the fact that he taught a whole heap of false things, and many of them, for many, many years, had a lot of difficulty with working through the emotions involved with why they chose to teach wrong things and the effect those wrong things have had on others. And then on top of that, they've also had these very long-term issues of having to try to correct it as well, very long-term. So there's been many people in the spirit world, even in the celestial heavens now, who are still acting because they desire to fix their problems from the past. And if they didn't have those problems, they wouldn't have those problems to fix, if that makes sense. So, but in terms of making a correction as well, it's very difficult because most people who teach false things are doing it out of arrogance. So there's a huge amount of arrogance in the people generally who set up these kind of things. Yeah. And those people believe I'm as arrogant as they are, but it's not the case at all. Yeah. You know, people don't realise if you don't become more loving and have a goal to become more loving. So it's not just about becoming happier, it's also about becoming more loving. And everybody thinks becoming happier is the same as becoming more loving, which actually is, from God's perspective, true, but not in the way you define happiness. The way all people define happiness is that when my addictions get met, I'm happy. Now, if you feel you're happier getting your addictions met, then that means that everything after we've finished talking to you is just going to turn to crap, really. Because at the end of the day, you think love is getting... You being loved is more important than you loving someone else. Basically, that's the fundamental problem. And that's the fundamental problem everyone worldwide has with hearing divine truth. They think, oh, now I've got all the justifications of showing that, like, Jada should love me. You know, not I should love Jada. Do you know what I mean? Like, you know, they're not... Because there's not a focus on whether I'm becoming a more loving person, but rather a focus on all of you around me are less loving because I know more than you now, right? Which is the average person who listens to divine truth. That's the average way they feel initially. And I'm saying that that's completely wrong, and it's also completely out of harmony with what I'm teaching. But the average person feels it. The average person feels that them being loved more is the goal, and them having to love others is something they should do less of.
Because they're more empowered to just say how everyone else is unloving and these are the ways, but not really looking at their own. Yep.
So most people in the world listening to divine truth have the wrong motive right from the beginning. And they are not practicing God's truth as a result. And this is why God's love isn't being felt by the majority. Because at the end of the day, they're just using truths in a very hypocritical manner, and certainly not applying it to themselves as much as they apply it to somebody else. And that is a very hypocritical thing to do. So that's why the more hypocrisy you demonstrate in your life, the less God will be interested in you. You know? But there's plenty of spirits who will be interested in you doing that. You know, that's what the average spirit wants to do, who are in bad condition as well. They want the hypocrisy, they want to blame other people, they want to get things from other people. And so, you know, who you're going to connect to is just going to be a bunch of spirits who embolden you or enable you down that road. So, very, very sad, actually. But this is always the problem with teaching divine truth. It was the problem in the first century. This is how things got bad after I died. Exactly the same thing. Even when I'm alive, nobody wants to check that what they're teaching is in harmony with what I'm teaching, even though they claim it is. They don't check it. It's the easiest thing to do is just shoot me a name and say, I'm doing this, is this right? Yes or no? And I can just say no and send an email back. The average person doesn't want to do that, right? They want to show me how what they're doing is better than what I'm doing. And the majority of them think it's better because they're nursemaiding people. And the problem with nursemaiding people is that people take less responsibility for their own feelings and emotions being nursemaided than they do if they're not. This is why God does not nursemaid you. Because he wants you to be a responsible adult, not a little child who gets pushed around by the wind of other people's opinions, you know. Yeah. So it's disturbing, but it's reality. How things happen, you know. You think of all those people around the earth who think they are teaching divine truth principles. There's hundreds of them that email us that I never email back, you know. They're just telling us how wonderful they're doing teaching this thing to other people, and I'm going, you're not even qualified, you don't even know it yourself yet. So, like, what are you doing? You know, and there's so much you'd have to say to them. Like, I'd have to write a novel, you know, like if I emailed it back. It's just impossible, really, to deal with it. The best way to deal with it, and I'll be dealing with it more when we go online, you know, just saying, no, that's not divine truth. No, that's not divine truth. No, what you're teaching is not what I'm teaching. You know, sad though.
Yeah.
And also very arrogant, thinking that you're teaching what your teacher is teaching you when the teacher is saying, no, you're not. And you're going all confused and saying, well, I think it is. And I'm saying, well, I know it's not.
Yeah.
And they're going, well, I think it is, so I'm still going to do it. You know, like, it's a pretty arrogant state. Yeah, nursemaiding people into their feelings. Not a good thing. Teaches people a lack of responsibility.
It's a really common definition of love on earth, isn't it?
Yeah, was one of the things Mummy and Daddy did for you, right?
Yeah.
Remember that discussion that we're still having?
Add it to the list, yeah.
Sorry?
Add it to the list.
Yeah. Well, it's already on our list, I think.
Oh.
On the list of the 30 things or something that we raised.
A good parent does.
What a good parent does. Yeah. All right, we've already covered 5. So you remember what the 5 were? What was the first one?
Tell the truth. That's what I have.
What was the first one?
Is this what would a good mum and dad do for me?
Yes.
Yeah. Was tell me good things about me rather than tell me the truth.
Correct. So it's tell me good things about me rather than tell me the truth.
Yeah.
And make out that what they're telling me is the truth, but it is actually just what I want to hear to be the truth. Right?
And make allowances for me.
And make allowances for when I'm obviously out of harmony with truth. But if you look at that issue, we discussed that issue already. Yep. I see the majority just still want that, even from us at times. So that's something to do with, right? Because if you want the unadulterated truth, you'll find you'll get it. From God, you'll get it. So God doesn't have a desire to confuse you. He doesn't have a desire to make your life hard. He doesn't have a desire to leave you uninformed. So if you want the truth, you'll get it. The majority of us don't want it, and that's why we don't get it. What we want is to hear nice things about ourselves, because that's what we think a good mum or dad would do. Right? Well, what was number 2?
Bail me out, especially emotionally. Rescue me from mistakes.
Yeah. So when I do something that I am responsible for, I want my mum and dad or people who love me to come to my rescue, instead of me take responsibility fully for the outcome and also correct the cause of the problem of what happened. So the majority of us view a loving person is a person who comes to my rescue, you know, not a person who says, no, you need to deal with that yourself now. Those kind of people the average person doesn't like at all.
And we talked about how we expect just say sorry and have the consequence be rubbed out.
Yeah.
Rather than actually have to deal with the consequences of our unloving
That's right.
actions.
We don't want to do what's required with reparation. We just want to say sorry and then everybody forgives us. And the reality is that a reparation is a part of compensation. So when we want to just say sorry and everyone forgive us, but we don't repair, then we really are not repentant. Therefore, we're really not sorry. Therefore, we're not going to be forgiven. So this is why the majority of people in the spirit world, once they arrive, they think they can say sorry, but they have no desire to make any reparation. And while they have no desire to make reparation, true sorrow is not present. And so therefore the law, even the law of compensation is not met. The demands of the law of compensation is not met. So they end up staying just in exactly the same location. And they're confused as to why. Because they think they're sorry, but they're not. Number 3?
Care for me, look after me, do things that I don't want to do.
Yeah. So the average person believes that when somebody loves you, they do the things that you find hard to do. You see this between the genders a lot, like where, you know, many men don't like dealing with accounts, and so they hand all the accounts over to their wives to deal with. Right? That's a very unloving thing to do. Many wives don't want to deal with maintenance, so they hand all the maintenance over to the man to do. Well, again, that's a very unloving thing to do, because at the end of the day, both of you are responsible for the creation of your life, and therefore both of you should be as skilled as each other in resolving the problems of life. Yep. So a person who teaches you that I'll make a barter with you, you do this for me, I'll do that for you, well, both of you think both of you are benefiting, but actually both of you are not benefiting. You're both actually being disabled from becoming disabled persons, unable to care for yourself fully. Yeah.
Number 4 was, that's all we've done. Oh no, we've done number 4 as well.
We did number 4 and 5, I think.
Teach me things. A good parent teaches me things.
Yeah, so a good parent is like always there. I ask a question, they're always there to give me an answer, always saying, now, what did we discuss was the problem with that?
You don't.
Hello?
It doesn't create your own seeking heart, and from your own you become dependent upon the teacher or the parent.
Correct.
Rather than self-motivated.
Yeah, so a good teacher will teach you something and then expect you to go and do it yourself. And if you don't do it yourself, then a good teacher would not teach you the next thing. That's what God does, right? God's a good teacher. Because that's exactly what God does. He teaches you one thing, then if you don't do it, he doesn't teach you the next thing. He's waiting for you to learn that one thing first. And God has a priority system where what he teaches you first is the first thing you need to do. It's the best thing for you to do, because that is blocking you from all the other things he can teach you, right? So unless you do it, unless you put into action that first thing, how can he teach you the next thing? You can't do the next thing with any understanding. So a good teacher will refuse to teach you any further if you refuse to take action any further. And that doesn't compare well with university, does it? Like most people who go to university are pretty resistive from the first 3 months onwards about learning, but they're still going to the course and the teacher's still teaching.
And we talked about the fact that God's already taught us many things, but we ignore it.
Yeah.
And we actually try to detune from God's education system.
That's
and,
right.
Yeah.
Okay. Number 5 was?
A good parent will make me happy. They are responsible for my happiness.
Yes. You remember we discussed that?
Did we discuss that?
Yep. Pretty sure we did.
Yeah. That's where my notes end.
Yeah. So a teacher is responsible for cheering me up. A teacher is responsible for making me feel good about myself. A teacher is responsible for making me feel like I'm valued. A teacher is responsible for making me feel like I have worth. A teacher is... Can you see, many of you have had that feeling towards me, that I'm responsible for all of these things. And to be honest, I'm responsible for none of them. You're responsible for all of those things, not me. So every time I try to prop up your worth, I'm actually disabling you. Right? A good teacher would know that they're disabling you every time you're trying to prop up your worth. All a good teacher should be able to do is share with you whatever it is they're teaching, and then how you feel about it, you need to deal with. If it makes you feel stupid, then feel that. If it makes you feel like you don't know what they're talking about, we'll feel that. If it makes you feel like you can't do it, feel that. You're responsible for your own feelings. They shouldn't have to nursemaid you through the process of learning. They're already gifting you their time by teaching you. They shouldn't have to, in addition to that, nursemaid you through your feelings. Right?
And we talked about, because that was about making me happy, a lot of us believe that the people who help me avoid fear love me and make me happy.
Make me happy.
When actually fear is darkness and creates darkness, and anyone who helps me avoid it really doesn't love me.
Not only that, they're making you darker
Yeah.
and making whatever you create darker as a result as well. Okay?
Yeah.
So that's a brief summary of those first 5. Obviously, we talked about them for almost an hour each, didn't we?
Yeah.
So obviously there's a lot more to that. But all right, what's number 6? Let's go to number 6.
A good parent makes me feel safe.
Okay. So what's the problem with someone making you feel safe? Eloisa, you want to start?
Our definition of safety is already flawed from God's perspective because we're already safe in God's universe.
Yeah.
So the fact that
Well, what is making us unsafe in God's universe?
humans,
No.
not being in harmony with God's laws and love and not living
True.
by the principles of
What's
God's
that all called? Sin, isn't it?
sin.
Okay,
Yes,
so
sin makes us unsafe.
sin makes us unsafe.
Correct.
Yeah.
And so we're wanting
So if a good teacher makes you feel safe,
they're not.
when your sin has already made you feel unsafe,
Yeah.
a good teacher is helping you ignore the fact that your sin created your lack of safety.
That's right.
So that's not very good, is it?
No.
He's basically saying, I'm not going to focus you on the cause of your lack of feelings of safety. I'm not going to focus you on the cause of that. I'm just going to distract you from the causes by trying to make you feel safe instead.
Yeah.
Right? So a good teacher goes, no, you're unsafe because you're sinning.
And you don't get the illusion of safety.
That's right. And God doesn't have the intention of giving you an illusion that you're safe when you're not.
Yeah.
God wants you to know your sin is making you unsafe. He wants you to know that. He wants you to see what that is causing in your life. Your sin is making problems for you, is what he wants you to get into your whole psychology. He wants you to see that sin is making you unsafe. Like, God's laws are not making you unsafe. The universe isn't unsafe. But when you sin, the law is going to now have to condemn your sin, and therefore you will become unsafe.
And I can also see, like, as a child in an unsafe environment because it's with sin, and you want your parent to say you're safe, but actually you feel incredibly unsafe, and sometimes you literally are unsafe with abusive situations.
Most of the time.
And so
as a child.
Exactly, you're desensitizing.
Correct. You're being told one thing is true when it's not. So what does that actually do to you? When you believe in, if you believe, like an example is, in a sinful environment you are unsafe, right? But when somebody's trying to make you safe, they're trying to create you an illusion that you're safe, because you're not actually safe. You're unsafe. Now, if you know that you're unsafe when you're unsafe, now you can make some actions. You can take some actions that are going to benefit your safety. But if you don't know you're unsafe when you're unsafe, what are you going to do?
Or you put yourself in unsafe positions all the time.
Or you're not going to do anything when you are in one.
Correct.
Yeah. So you're going to be drawn to unsafe circumstances. Yeah. Or when there is some around you, you're just going to say, no, I'm safe.
Yeah.
When actually you're not.
Yeah.
Like, most people don't realise it, but every time you walk into a pub on the planet, you're unsafe.
Yeah.
You are, because there's a bunch of spirits there waiting to get hold of somebody who's going to drink their first drink. Right? And if you're going in there just for the sake of having a drink, and you're not going in there for some other reason, you're going in there, they know you're going in there for that purpose, they want to get you to have more than one drink. Because that's how they live off of people who get drunk, by you having more drinks. So every time you walk in that environment, you're unsafe. Now, how many people on earth believe they're unsafe when they go to a pub?
Very few.
Very few.
Yeah. The irony is kids do,
Kids
don't they?
do.
Like with adults, they feel so unsafe and they don't want to go.
Oftentimes, but not many adults, right?
No.
By the time they're adults, they've been detuned. They are now in denial about their safety. They're going, no, there's no unsafety here. And then when something unsafe occurs, they're like shocked.
Yeah.
And go, why are you shocked? Like, you shouldn't be shocked. You should have been realistic. You're going into an environment that encourages unsafe behaviour, even in yourself. The more drunk you get, the more unsafe you're going to become. Is that not true?
Yeah.
How many of you have done things when you're drunk that you would never do when you're sober? Yeah, pretty much everyone, right? Who's been drunk. So that shows you that every time you're in an environment that encourages your drunkenness, you're unsafe. Okay. So teaching you that a person who loves you makes you feel safe is not addressing the cause of your lack of safety. You follow? So every time a parent is saying you're safe when you're not only are they lying to you for whatever reason, and most of the time it's because they are in self-delusion themselves. They want to believe something's safe when it's not. But they're not only lying to you, but they're creating in you a delusion that later you're going to have to deal with at some point, realising that, I put myself in these situations which I thought were fine, but actually they were very unsafe. Yep. Every time you have sex with somebody, the first time you meet them, you're in a very unsafe situation. You know nothing about the person, nothing about their intentions, nothing about their history. You know, you haven't asked any questions about these matters. You're very unsafe. You could actually die from it, right? Same as when you walk into a pub, you could die from that too, because you could go in sober, come out drunk, get in the car and have an accident and die from it. There's plenty of people in the world who have. When you do these things, you're very unsafe, right? Sometimes you're just very lucky, or you could say, from God's perspective, you're being looked after by guides or whatever, or guardians, you know, and bad things haven't happened in very unsafe situations that you've put yourself in. Because even when you've put yourself in an unsafe situation, God's trying to make your life safe. Right? Yep. But a good teacher does not teach you that, you know, he doesn't try to make you feel safe with what he teaches you. Yeah.
So if we go back to the good parent makes me feel safe,
Yep.
really what you're saying is, truthfully, God as a good parent makes me safe, but
He has put into place a mechanism for safety. But your free will can make this entire mechanism fail for you. Right? So, Brittany, you want to ask?
When you say that God's put a mechanism in place to keep us safe, do you mean his laws and that you have a guardian?
Not only his laws, yeah, his guardian spirits, everybody's given a guardian. God's very concerned about your safety. So God's put in, and even though he knows that you have been born into an unsafe world because of the sin of others, right? The sin of others has created an unsafe world. When you arrived, when you were first incarnated, at the time of your conception, you had no sin, but you were being born into an unsafe world, and God knows that, and God's going, well, what can I do to make Brittany safe? So what he does is he assigns a guardian to you. By the time when you're in the womb, he assigns a guardian to you before you're even born. He's trying to protect you from that time. Then, of course, there is his laws that if you live in harmony with them will make you safe. But also he's trying to influence through influencing the guardians and guides of others to make sure that their interactions with you create more safety for you. So he's not only influencing your guide or guardian, he's also influencing like people you don't know or have met for the first time. Like Anna and Ulf, before you met them, he was influencing their guardians to not harm you. Does that make sense? That their actions would not harm you. Of course, how much they listen is really up to their free will, right? But he was already doing that. He's already got the mechanisms in place, not only the laws, but he's also got a personal interest in you being safe. So his personal interest is demonstrated by his assignments of your guide, your guardian, other people's guides and guardian around you, trying to influence those people. And he's also trying to influence through third parties, you and the people around you, to make you safe. So let's say he can't influence your parents, but there's a friend of your parents who he can influence, then he'll do that to try and make you safe. There's plenty of times where parents get abusive, but a friend says you shouldn't be doing that, right? And this is influenced a lot of the time in order to make you safe. Make sense, Brittany? So God's personally interested in your welfare and in your safety, but he's created a safe universe, and it's only sin that makes it unsafe.
So actually God wants me to feel unsafe if I am unsafe.
Yes.
Not like we want a parent to make us feel safe whether we're unsafe or
not.
safe.
That's right. Yeah,
God wants me to be sensitive to my lack of safety.
He does.
Yeah.
He does, because the more sensitive to the lack of safety you are, the more he can influence you to get into a safe place. That makes sense, doesn't it? But if you're desensitised to your own lack of safety, then how can he influence you to get into a more safe place? You're going to just not respond to the influence. Yeah? Many times you've done that in the past, right? Not responded when you could. If you were more sensitive, you would have gone, oh, this is not very good. Yeah. So a loving person, actually, when you're unsafe, they will show you how unsafe you actually are. That's what a loving person will do. Makes sense, doesn't it? An unloving person will try to make you feel like you're fine, you're not in danger, right? Basically, an unloving person will try to make you not feel fear when you need to feel fear, when you need to go through the feeling of fear. And fear and safety are completely unrelated, by the way, aren't they?
Wait, I don't understand, because if you feel
Microphone.
I would think they're completely related, because if you feel afraid, then you think, maybe this situation's unsafe and I need to remove myself.
Yep. Is that what everyone thinks? Because it's not actually true. You didn't really ask the question, though.
Yeah, so how are they unrelated?
Well, how are they related? You tell me how they're related.
Oh, what
Because
I
you just
said.
gave me a thing that doesn't prove they're related.
Oh,
Yeah. So you think about what you said to me.
if fear is a mechanism to know if you're unsafe.
That's your belief?
That's your
Yes,
belief.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, fear's not a mechanism. Love is a mechanism to know when you're unsafe. Fear isn't. You think about it.
Okay.
What is fear saying? Fear is a false expectation appearing real. Isn't that not true? So when you're afraid, you believe something's going to happen that may not happen.
It's the past being imposed
So
on something.
your fear is not the truth. What you're basically saying to me is your fear is the truth that tells you when you're not safe. And I'm saying, no, your fear is not the truth. It doesn't tell you when you're not safe. All your fear tells you is what you're afraid of. It tells you nothing else. You follow me? It is not related to your safety. Love is related to your safety. When you're in a loving environment, you're safe. Right? When you're afraid, do you know when you're in a loving environment?
No.
No.
Probably not.
So therefore, you don't know. When you're afraid, you do not know when you're safe and you're not safe. You think you do, but you don't.
It's actually, isn't it? It's the sensitivity to love that helps me understand when I'm safe and when I'm not. Because
Correct.
if I can feel that there's love in the environment, if I can feel there's truth in the environment,
You're
I
safe.
can assess logically I'm safe. If I can feel there's no love and truth, then logically, without even emotion, if I'm just sensitive to that, I don't even have to feel afraid. I can just say, I'm not safe. I need to do something to ensure my safety.
And I'm not saying that you have to feel afraid in order to be safe, to become safe. You don't have to feel afraid. In fact, the more afraid you feel, the more likely it is you're in your sin, and therefore the more likely you are that whatever you're trying to avoid is going to end up being more unsafe.
Does that make sense, Helena? Yeah.
Doesn't make any sense to you, does it? And to be frank, it doesn't make hardly any sense to anybody. This is why we believe our fear is the truth, right? You think about it in your day-to-day life. What you're afraid of, you think is, you should truthfully be afraid of it. Mm-hmm. That's what you think.
And you also think, I'm in this situation, this fear is legitimate in this situation, without even being sensitive to what are the actual factors, the love and truth factors in this situation. Yeah. Very often it's just, oh, there's a red T-shirt there, I should be, that it's an association with something.
It's an association with your past.
It's like seeing Charlie and go, he's got a red T-shirt and he's a guy, I should be afraid, instead of going, is Charlie loving? Is Charlie truthful? If he's not, I should do something about my safety. If he is, I can be safe.
Yeah.
And fear is not an indicator then, it's just the sensitivity to love and truth that is giving me the reasoning. When I see the red shirt and I go, oh, he's a guy and I'm afraid, well, that's not me assessing anything apart from bringing an unfelt emotion from the past and putting it on Charlie.
And it completely untrue, which it most likely is going to be.
He could be loving, truthful, but I'm terrified.
Yeah.
Because I'm not feeling anything about him. I'm just associating.
Yeah.
You said it's most likely not to be the truth. Is it because fear just makes you illogical? I've heard you say that fear makes you illogical.
Fear makes you many things. Firstly, fear is the main cause of your sin. So fear is the main reason why you sin. You not wanting to feel fear is the main reason why you sin. So sin, didn't we just say sin is the cause of?
Unsafety.
All unsafety. So fear is your cause, is a primary cause for you being unsafe. Your fear is a primary cause.
Yeah.
Right. It's not alleviating your feelings of lack of safety, it's enhancing them.
Yeah, like if you give a practical example, like we'll just extend the Charlie example. Say I see Charlie, he's a guy, he's got a red shirt and I'm afraid. I've been hurt by men in red shirts before. And then I go, I'm afraid, I need to alleviate my fear. Now I might do any number of things based on, I might sexually project at Charlie because I've learned
which actually makes you more dangerous.
That puts me in a less safe situation, but my fear is saying, I've got to do something for the fear to go away. So I might even end up sleeping with Charlie, like women do this all the time. Or I might get, I'm not going to sleep with you, Charlie, no, don't worry. And I'm not afraid of you. But I also might get really angry at Charlie. How's that making me any safer? I might try and just like pander to Charlie and play all nice with Charlie. All these things are actually just motivated to take my fear away.
And they're making your life more dangerous at the same time.
If you use that example, you can see I'm getting in a more and more dangerous situation, aren't I? Spiritually, emotionally, and physically.
Yep.
And that's fear driving my actions. Whereas if I'm just sensitive and I go, actually, in this example, Charlie doesn't have some nice emotions towards women, I think I'm going to leave.
Yeah.
That's not a fear-based decision, that's
a love-based decision.
Yeah.
Love of him as well as you. Yeah. So, from God's perspective, there is no connection between your fear and safety. None. Not a single thread of connection between the two things. One is completely separate to the other. But most of us go, no, my fears are real. So now you've turned the false into being real. And now you've turned it into being real because it's not truth, it's sin. It is going to hurt you. Because you've turned the false into being real. You've said the false is real. What you now believe to be true is going to hurt you now because it's false. So its only capacity is that it can hurt you. There is no other capacity for something false. It always has to hurt you. The law demands it hurts you, actually, right? Because it's false. Right? So every time you believe something is false, and you believe it to be true, not only are you sinning, but there is also going to be less safety. So a person who tries to make your fear go away is not making you more safe. They are making you less safe. Right. Very important to understand. Ella?
I was just thinking it's like one of the big lies in the world, because there's so many times when people go, oh, a bit of fear is very good because it's indicating you're recognising the lack of safety or whatever, and it's like just another false belief.
Fear doesn't help you recognise the lack of safety. In fact, if anything, whenever you're afraid, you become less logical, less clear, less connected, also less motivated.
Yes.
Because often you go into fright. You know, it's well known that fear has many potential responses, one of which is flight, but the other one of which is fight. Yeah. And another one of which is completely do nothing. So of all those three, when love would dictate you fly, you might do the other two.
Yeah.
Out of your fear. Yeah. And what's that going to do? It's just going to make your life worse.
Create more violence.
Yeah, so every time you get angry with a person in a dangerous situation, you're making your life worse, not better. Right? So how's that helping? Well,
the way that God communicates that I am in an unsafe situation, is that by the conscience? Yeah.
That's how spirits do it too, through the same similar mechanism. They just inform you. You shouldn't be here, you should get going. And the more emotionally attached to your fear you are, the less they can do that. So the more in fearful turmoil you are, the less clarity you have when it comes to the connection with your guide, guardian, God. The more in turmoil you personally are, the more difficult it's going to now become to hear them. Yep. So that's making you less safe. Yep. Saoirse? And then die.
Is that because if you kind of believe in fear, you want the lie and you don't want the truth, and so you can't hear the truth from other people?
Not only that, when you're emotionally in fear, how is it feel?
Well, stressful.
It feels stressful, doesn't it?
Anxious.
And can you think clearly when you're afraid? No. So can they influence your thoughts clearly when you're afraid?
No.
No.
There's no space for it.
There's no space for it. Make sense? None. Di?
Yeah, I was about to say the same thing. I remember years ago I couldn't tell the difference between being afraid and intuition.
Yeah.
There was no, it was all just a big mess.
That's right. Of course it is, because whenever you're afraid, you're basically saying, my internals are saying, do this, because your fear is in panic, right, all the time. So your internal, when you're listening to your fear, you go, I've got to do this, I've got to do this, there's no other alternative, is the general feeling, right? Now in that place, you're the least intuitive than you've ever been, right? Because intuition requires calmness, peacefulness, being able to assess things accurately and calmly. And when you're afraid, none of those things are true. Because fear is an emotional state caused by lies, caused by falsehoods. It's an emotional state that you believe to be real that has no bearing on reality whatsoever. Yeah. Interesting, eh? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Most people on earth don't understand the dynamics of fear, and they don't understand the disconnection between fear and safety. They believe that fear is what makes them safe. Yeah, and there's a difference between fear and an accurate assessment of a situation. So, for example, I know that if I go out and walk out in traffic, and I get hit by a car doing 60 k's an hour, let's say, well, my body's not equipped to handle 60 k's an hour impact. Logically, I know that. But I'm calm about it. So when I walk out in traffic, I'm calm walking out in traffic. I'm not panicking here, there, worried about what's happening, worried about a car hitting me. You understand? But let's imagine for a moment I'm not calm and I'm worried about a car hitting me. What do I become then? I become uncertain. I become worried. My fear is now dictating when I move and when I stop. My judgment will also now be out. It won't calculate correctly speeds and whether something impacts me.
And you're unpredictable for drivers?
I'm unpredictable. The driver now becomes unpredictable because he's noticing an unpredictable person is walking out in front of me now. I'm unpredictable too. I am creating more danger for myself, actually, in that state. That's what I'm doing. And yet the majority of people tell you, no, you've got to be a bit afraid of traffic. The only reason why you're afraid of traffic is because you've got love-based issues connected with traffic in your childhood. Usually love was withdrawn from you when your mum and dad were in a panic when you're in traffic, right? So you've got love-based issues there. That's caused you to not think clearly, not be able to reason clearly, not be able to be peaceful and calm inside when you're around traffic, and therefore more dangerous to yourself and others. Right? Oh.
Is that the same thing as if you lock your door at the night just because you're afraid somebody will come and abuse you?
Well, if you're motivated to lock your door at night because you're afraid somebody will come and abuse you, then obviously that's a fear-driven thing, and it's going to probably create the very thing you're trying to avoid, right? Now, you know, if you're motivated to lock your door at night for other reasons, and I don't know what they would be, but who knows, like you might know you're in a dangerous neighbourhood, and you might think it's wise to lock your door at night so people just don't walk in and out, they have to knock on it. Well, that's you making more of a wise decision, but not driven by fear, because if you're really wise, you would know that somebody can break into your house anytime they want. Most houses are not impregnable, they're not fortresses. You know, a rock here and a stick there, and they're in. Do you know what I mean? For the most part, right? We've got glass windows and everything, a rock here and a stick there, and it's all dealt with, right? So if somebody really wants to come in, they're going to come in, right? And you really know that if you're logical about it. But the average person, knowing that freaks them out. So they think locking the door is going to help. But it doesn't help, does it? If somebody really wants to harm you, they're just going to get a stick or a stone or something, throw it through a window and walk in.
Yeah.
Aren't they?
Yeah.
Right? So this whole thing of did you lock your door or whatever, it was, well, I'll lock my car door when I'm down shopping because I want to come back and see it's still there. I'm not afraid about someone stealing it. I would like to have it back when I leave it, right?
It's more about, are you logically and lovingly assessing a situation? Like sometimes, like I feel I have an assessment of a situation that is probably close to true from God's perspective, but it triggers a fear in me. And unless I deal with that fear emotionally, then my response to the situation is influenced by the fear, and therefore it's not going to be a safe response. Yeah. So I can accurately assess that something is unsafe, but if I have fear about that and I don't deal with it, then I will become unsafe in my response to it.
And also you can't accurately assess now whether it's safe or not.
That's right. That's right. It's beyond that point. Even if I sense, there's the potential of this in this person, and then I get all afraid about it, I can't really assess. And often I don't take the action that would make me the safest, like address the thing truthfully, address it immediately.
Well, also address the emotional reason that drives most causal things.
Feel my reason why it triggers fear in me, all those things,
Why do people get abused? Some people get abused and others not. For the most part, it's because in their childhood they're in an environment where the emotions cause a set of circumstances which attract spirits and other dark people into an abusive environment that then allow them to abuse a child. It's not if the child's in a loving environment and the child has never been emotionally affected at all, it's very unlikely that they'll attract those events for a start. So actually the child is clear of those emotional injuries, has a lot higher chance of remaining safe, never being in danger, than a child who's in an abusive environment. Now, this is a well-known fact on earth, actually. It's a well-known fact that the majority of people who get abused have come from abusive environments, right, themselves. This is a well-known fact psychologically. And yet, nobody goes, we're all safe aside from the people who have been abused. What do they teach a little child from kindergarten? What do they call it? Stranger danger. Most of the time, who abuses you? People you know, right? So this whole idea that a stranger is going to abuse you is like, it may occasionally happen. Right? I'm not saying it doesn't occasionally happen, But in terms of the amount of abuse that occurs on earth, 90% or more of the abuse occurs through people who know you. And why don't they teach mistrust all your friends? Well, that's what, if they were being truthful, that's what they would teach.
Well, if they're being truthful, wouldn't they teach you deal with your fear and assess everyone based individually based on
the lack of love they have?
Yeah.
Yep, that's what they would teach you. But the majority but they're not going to teach you the truth, because that would mean them recognising the truth, which is scary. Most people don't want to feel that, so they want to believe the lie, and that is that strangers hurt everybody, not people you know. But the reality is while every child gets taught that strangers hurt you and your friends don't, they're going to keep getting hurt. So it's just like a lot of what we do on earth is completely illogical because of this one reason, because we feel that our parents should make us safe, right? And we feel there's a connection between fear and safety. And there isn't. There's no connection between fear and safety. In fact, there is a direct connection between fear and a lack of safety. That's where the direct connection is. Make sense? Yeah.
Such an important point.
Yeah. So I've got a mummy and daddy who make my fears go away. So what was point number 6? Make me feel safe. They make me feel like I'm safe. Now, if they're making me feel like I'm safe when I'm completely unsafe, that's pretty bad, isn't it? That's a very destructive thing to do to anybody.
And that's how you end up as an adult in very unsafe situations, thinking you're safe or you can manage it, or it's just like what home was.
That's right. Yeah, it's just like, keep out of my mind the real dangers and let me believe an illusion, where I feel there's no danger. Yeah. Yeah. And to do that is very, what's the word for somebody who's teaching you a lie and wants you to believe a lie?
Brainwashing?
Well, it's brainwashing for sure, it's brainwashing, but it's also very devious in a way, isn't it? Because it's basically saying, ignore the fact that there's a lack of safety and I'll make you feel like you're safe, rather than actually realise there's a lack of safety and do something about it. Yeah. So a good teacher, God, a good parent, will not make you feel safe. When you're unsafe, God will make you feel unsafe.
Yeah.
God, when I say make you feel, He wants to get you to be conscious that you're unsafe. He wants you to realise you're unsafe. He wants you to feel it so you do something about it.
And that's not the same as feeling afraid.
No.
You're very good at this. I watch you do this all the time, where you go, this is not a safe situation. You're not in a panic. You're not freaking out. No. You just have assessed it and gone,
not safe.
It's not safe. Let's do something different. Yeah.
Mary often feels like she wants to stay, and I'm saying, no, I'm leaving so you can stay. But it's unsafe.
Yeah. Because of certain issues in my childhood, until I feel about them, I think the emotion tells me the way to manage this unsafe situation, this fear-invoking situation, is to give more, is to
pander
more. Yeah.
Calm the person down, or to whatever, but it just makes it worse.
So there's sort of a false belief telling me I'll get safety if I do, and lack of.
In other words, I'm going to stay here in this environment and do something instead of leaving it. Yeah.
A lot of people do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Every time you walk into a pub, you're doing that. Staying in an unsafe environment instead of leaving it. Yeah. Well,
is that what drives the arms race as well?
Well, it's fundamentally what drives almost all activities on earth. Medical activities, political activities, economic activities, health activities. If you think of the major industries of life, they are all governed around fear, telling you what's safe. Right? What do most politicians know how to get control of the populace? How do you do it? It's really simple. You make them afraid. You make them afraid. Right? They don't even want you to feel safe. They want you to feel afraid. Because if you feel afraid, you'll do a whole heap of things in error Because when you're in a panic, you're stupid. It's true, isn't it?
Yep.
You're not able to think clearly, you're not able to feel clearly, you're not able to make wise decisions in a panic. You are stupid. They know the best way to get what they want is to make you as stupid as possible. Right? And they do that by making you feel like you're unsafe when you're not. They make you feel afraid when you're not, there's no need to be afraid. All right? Or they try to create fear. Like, what was COVID all about? Creating fear, wasn't it?
Yep.
Yeah? And what was it mostly? It was a distraction from other bigger issues on the planet. If you think about it, the whole world's going to hell in a handbasket with the climate, right? Right, to get you out of dealing with the reality of that, well, let's make you all afraid about something else. Because then, and you think about it, how many of you fell in the trap that every day you talked about it, every day you read something about it, every day you looked it up, every day, like, this is it. This is you responding in the way, exactly the way they wanted you to respond, which was you be really, really freaked out, right? So that your entire attention is dictated by that one thing, so you never look at anything else. Right? That's what you do when you're afraid. It's not very logical and it's very unsafe. Because what you're doing is you're focusing just on one area where you think you're trying to make you safe, and in the end you're making yourself unsafe in so many other areas because you're sinning. You are when you're sinning, you're making yourself unsafe in all the other areas. So it's a very dangerous thing to believe that a person who loves you makes you feel safe. What they want you to feel is what you feel. And if you feel unsafe, feel unsafe. But they're not trying to make you feel safe in order to avoid the feeling of your fears. Right? Which is the main reason why a person wants to feel safe, even if they're not. They've just got a whole heap of fears they need to feel, and God wants you to feel them. He doesn't want you to stay believing them. He doesn't want you to stay thinking they're true. He wants you to feel them so you deal with them and get rid of them. He wants you to have, in the end, he wants you to end up with clarity in the way you assess every situation. That's what he wants. Right? But when you're governed by fear, you have no clarity. You think you do, but you don't. You think you do, but you don't. It's a terrible illusion to believe that your fear is linked to your safety, because it's not true at all. Like I said, no linkage at all.
Well, the only way it's linked is that it's in a negative sense.
Yeah, well, your fear is linked to your lack of safety, not to your safety. Rob?
So, releasing your fear, is that like necessary?
Sorry?
Releasing fear.
Releasing fear, yeah.
Is that necessary to get healthy self-love? So you get in that place.
Yep.
You're not going to get healthy self-love any other way, basically.
No. If you retain your fears, you'll never love yourself.
Yeah.
Ever. Yeah. That's why there's no celestial spirit who has fear. Yeah. Because I've learned to love. Part of loving themselves is to get rid of their fears. Your fear. See, most of you believe holding on to your fears is the wisest course of action. Isn't that true? Yep. Like when you're not in a relationship with someone, you go, I've got to be real careful about relationships because, make me very unhappy and everything. So you hold on to not having one, right? That's you living in your fear. Now, in that place, are you going to ever take the opportunity to be loved? Probably not, right? Your fear and your love are opposing each other. Most of you believe your fear will lead to love, and most of you also believe that the reason why you're afraid is because you weren't loving, is because of how you viewed love in the past. Most of you, in other words, when somebody said they loved you, you believed them, you entered a relationship with them without being able to feel them, then you realised after a while they didn't love you, and then you felt hurt. And what you've done is you've blamed love for the hurt. But actually, they didn't love you. That's why you feel hurt. So it's not because of love that you got hurt. It's because of the lack of love you got hurt. Right? So, again, you're more unsafe when there's less love. Yeah. That's when you're... So there's a direct relationship between love and safety. There's a direct relationship between fear and a lack of safety. The more you're afraid, the more unsafe you are. The more love, the more safe you are.
It's even true, isn't it, when you are a kid and your parent has a lot of fear, they actually create a lack of safety for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. In your own environment.
And you associate a whole heap of things with love that are not love.
Yes.
Yeah, and so you end up in a quite distraught state internally, emotionally, that is completely out of harmony with truth and love and completely out of harmony with safety.
Yeah.
You end up doing a whole heap of things that make your life more unsafe. Yeah, the last 2 weeks we had the fencers come and do the fence in between the neighbour and so forth. And a lot of what we're just talking about sort of happened there. And it's really quite interesting how things go when more love is brought into the equation compared to how they could have gone.
Mm-hmm.
Transformed.
Yeah. So, to give you an example of that with this fencing situation, 6 months ago we decided we wanted to do the fence between us and the neighbour because these cows kept getting in and destroying our environment work on the environment centre, on the function centre. And so we decided we were going to do a fence. So Elo started contacting the guy. The guy got instantly angry with Eloisa and blocked her from communication. So he wasn't going to do anything about the situation. So if fear dictates, what would you do next? Nina?
I'd probably give up, do nothing sort of thing. Yeah.
Okay, do nothing, which means?
The cows keep getting into the environment centre and undoing all the loving work that we've been doing.
Okay, so that's not a very good outcome, is it?
No.
Okay, what else would you do if you're afraid? Cecily?
Keep pressing the neighbour to communicate with you.
Okay. He obviously doesn't want to. What's that going to do? Keep pressing somebody to do something they don't want to do?
Create a bad outcome because they're going to be aggravated.
They just get more and more aggravated, don't they? Yeah, okay. Angela?
Just go ahead and do what you want to do.
Yeah, that's what I did. That's what I said to Elle we should do.
Do you think fear causes you to do that?
Fear doesn't cause you to do that.
You wouldn't do it if you're afraid.
If you wouldn't do it if you're afraid.
No.
Yeah, that's what I did. Yep. Charlie?
You might be afraid they're going to destroy your work, so you might just shoot them all as soon as they come onto your place.
Yeah, okay, so
Get angry.
So you just get angry.
Or be violent.
Or be violent. That obviously is going to cause more problems, isn't it? Yeah. Okay. So what we did was we just went ahead anyway. We were going to go ahead with the fence. So I said to Eloisa, look, he's highly likely not going to pay for it anyway. We need the fence because it has to be done. We're going to keep undoing our work otherwise. And in the end, we'll see what happens. So, and I said what I predicted was that he would come there while we were trying to do the fence and try to stop us and all that jazz. And then we could reason with him again, you know. So anyway, Elo starts the work 2 weeks ago with a guy called Marcus and starts the work. Within a few hours, the neighbour's there.
After 6 months of not
After
being...
6 months of not communicating, he's there. That's a good result.
Yeah.
Isn't it? Well, he's now communicating. He's yelling and screaming, but he's communicating, right? So that's a better thing than just being blanked altogether, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right. And the fence is underway. He came just after it was all torn down, the old one, which is the ideal time to come. Isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, because if he came down while it was still up, then it would have been harder. But if it's all torn down, now a fence has to be done, right?
Yeah.
So that's a good outcome. So he rocked up then and obviously yelled and swore at Eloisa, which wasn't very pleasant, and put a stop to the fence. He's not going to do the fence and, you know, all this kind of stuff. And I said to Eloise, well, that's pretty unreasonable. We were over the coast at the time talking to Catherine, but Eloise rang us up and said, look, this is what he said. So what's our next decision to make? What would fear dictate? Di, you want to have a stab at what you'd do if you're afraid?
You might stop. You might do what he's dictating.
Okay, not very practical because the fence doesn't get built, right?
But he was demanding, you've got to let me build the fence and I've got to build it in a different way than you're going to.
You might bend to his demands.
Okay, so you might bend to his demands and say, rightio, you do it and we'll pay you to do it your way, but it's not what we want. Right, so it's still not what we want. So compromise, in other words. Fear would dictate a compromise. Right? In that regard, fear would dictate a compromise of the outcome. So what's the best course of action? Cess, you want to have a stab?
As you did, go ahead with it and pay for it yourself if he refuses.
Yeah. So we say to him, look, we're going to pay for it ourselves. If you want your part of the fence to have barb on it, well then you put it on your side and not on our fence. Because we're paying for the fence, it's our fence. Yeah, not yours. So that's what we did. All right, the next day it becomes clear that the workflow, Marcus's workflow doing the fence is not very good. We've got a whole heap of logs that are nearly a kilometre away from where the fence is being built. And
fence posts.
Fence posts, yeah. And obviously he's got to come back, and he's only got he told us he was going to have a truck and a bigger tractor, but he didn't have a big truck and he didn't have a tractor. So there's a lot of things to sort out with him, too, because he didn't have a truck and a tractor, but he's still billing us for a truck and a tractor and so forth. And obviously he's moving these logs with a trailer now, and he can only fit like a few on them, and then he's got to go back and forward, back and forward, back and forward, and he's losing like days of time at $2,000 a day. Mm-hmm. So what would fear dictate? Nina?
You wouldn't say anything, you just let him keep wasting your time, his time and your money.
Yeah, well, you've already had an argument, with the next door neighbour, and now you're going to be arguing with the guy who's doing the work. And so what's the best thing to do? Fear would say the best thing to do is just let him do the job and pay the bill and write it off for a bad thing and never do it again with the person. That's what fear would dictate, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Okay, not a very good outcome. Right, so Elo engaged fear for 3 days.
That's right.
Yep. But I went down there on Friday morning, looked at the job and go, well, there's a lot of problems here with this job. And the way it's going to cost us, $10,000 more than what we budgeted, because he's being so slow, because there's so many logistical problems. So what does love do? Rani, you want to
We'll confront the truth of what's going on. So with his workflow.
Well, that's what you think. Yes, that's what Eloisa thought too.
Okay.
But that's not what love would do.
You've got the microphone.
Look at what's going on in me first.
Well, that'd be first, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Look at why you're trying to ignore the situation. So we had a discussion about why the directors were ignoring the situation. All 3 directors were ignoring the situation. Yeah. What else would love do? Doesn't love want to help people?
Get in and help. Yes.
Okay, so how can we help? Nina?
I've overheard the conversation, so maybe I shouldn't say that.
Well,
no,
you say.
Organised so that all the logs are up there in a more efficient manner.
Okay,
so
help him out with the logs so that they get up there and it's easier for him to get the job done. That's what love would dictate, isn't it? When you're upset, though, what do you feel like doing?
Not cooperate.
I don't want to help him. He's got to help.
Not cooperate.
Yeah, I'm paying him to do the job. I'm not now going to do a bit of the job for him. That's what your fear and your anger says, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm saying, no, we need to do this. So Corny and I got out Sunday, and Corny did the hard work and I did the easy work in the tractor. Mind you, my leg was very sore from the plunge for 3 days. But it took us 4 hours, we moved all the logs. And even Corny stripped a lot of the logs for him as well, so he didn't have to do that either. Right? So now how's the workflow going to go? Heaps better, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it did. Instead of it like the same amount of distance they had to do, it took them 5 days, it took them 3.5 days to do. So just if we'd done it earlier, we'd have probably saved another day on top of that, another couple of days, if we'd done it earlier. That makes sense? So, sorry. Love dictates that we take some action to do positive things, even when the other person is obnoxious. Right? That's what love would dictate. Right? Eloisa?
Because something I learnt from Jesus was it's not just about the love, like you're loving the other person, but it's also love of the organisation. And when you get all angry and like bitter and twisted and upset and fear, and it's all personal.
You're just caring about yourself now.
That's right. Well, you're not even caring about yourself, actually.
Yourself, really.
Like I'm kicking myself in the, I'm actually not caring about the organisation or myself or them.
That's right.
Because there's money, time, effort for everyone involved.
Yeah.
And so you just don't logically even think of that either.
No.
Sometimes you want them to love you, and then you don't want to just deal with the fact, okay, they don't love me, I could love them.
You know, he could have thought of all the logistics, and he could have told us, like Monday at 10 a.m, as soon as he started the job, I've got a logistical problem, can you help me out?
Yeah.
Couldn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I knew he already had a logistical problem, and I could have helped him out at Monday at 7 o'clock in the morning.
Or even the week before.
Correct.
Yep.
Correct.
Okay. So again, because we get people to do the jobs, we then go, we don't go, how can I help you? We go, no, I'm paying you to do the job, do the job how I want, do it exactly how I want. I'm not going to help you. I'm giving you the money, which is a very unloving stance, isn't it, actually? Yep. So what else? So can you see in that entire outcome, if fear governs my decisions, then things can only get worse. If love governs my decisions, there's a high likelihood things will get better. The more loving you are to a person, generally, no matter what their condition, they recognise it. They do. So the first thing they recognised Monday morning after Corny and I had done the Sunday was, wow, these logs are all in the easier place for us. It's the first thing they saw.
And it was 38 degrees on Monday. So
yeah.
Oh. But isn't there a risk that you help him avoid his need for self-responsibility in that?
Is it? How am I helping him avoid self-responsibility? And I'm just saying, you're doing a fence that I want you to do. I'm just going to help you a bit. How is that avoiding self-responsibility?
So you have to take responsibility for his lack of planning and
Oh no! I am talking to him about his lack of planning. We haven't got the end of the story yet.
Okay.
Yes.
Can I add something to that? When Jesus had done the logical thing and he'd taken everything up and he loved them and helped them, it was notable that even though their workflow still had issues, they actually were faster and did things better. Because they had changed as well. Like, oh wow,
not only that, they felt loved.
That's right. And so things actually were better the second week than they were the first week when I had been vegan.
It's funny, isn't it? Because like a lot of us feel like God is almost, when we hear about God's laws, that God's a punitive God who's just like, we'll sort it out, or be self-responsible. And
he wants to help you sort it out.
God is trying to help us sort it out all the time. There's so many opportunities and so many gifts and so much grace for where we're at with things, but often because it's not meeting our false definition of love, which is my good parent just gets me out of any tricky, difficult situation, we go, oh, God's just like left me here with my compensation, and it's not actually the case.
No.
Yeah, God's really
He's trying to help you all the time. Yeah. Yep. So anyway, come to Thursday, and he wants his bill paid. He finishes halfway through the day Thursday, and also one of the days he had one person working less as well. No, they had 3 people, in other words, working instead of 4. And from what we discussed, he was going to have 4 people working all the time, and he didn't that particular day. But he still charges exactly the same rate. On top of that, Elo questioned how they terminated the fence, and they didn't really terminate it very well. The way they finished it off right at the end was a weakness of the fence. So and Ello tried to raise it, and he just dismissed that. Also, during the week, he tried to negotiate with the neighbour on Ello's behalf when Ello told him specifically not to do that. So there are quite a few problems, right? Okay, so how do we deal with it? Fear would say, right?
Pay the bills, be done with it.
Okay, it's only $1,000 or a few $1,000 or whatever. In addition, pay the bill, get out of it here, and don't deal with them again. Does that benefit him? It means he doesn't get any work from us ever again. Does it benefit us? What if we want a fencer in the future? Doesn't benefit us either, really. Also, nobody learns. He doesn't learn as to why you're not happy, and you don't learn in the sense that you don't learn how to have a proper conflict that actually has a beneficial outcome. You don't learn that either. Not a very loving thing. So what do you think we should do? I know what I'm going to do, but what do you think we should do?
Have the conflict.
Yeah, so what I'm saying to Elle, well, by my estimations, he's delivered us out at least $1,000. So I'm not paying $1,000 of the bill. And I'm saying to him, it's a temporary situation. I've got to talk to you face to face about this situation. I want to talk to you about how the fence has been terminated. And I want to talk to you about some other matters. And I do want to work with you again. But it's going to be dependent upon the outcome of our discussion. Have the discussion. Thanks, Ange.
When I think about how I would have dealt with that, or my family would have dealt with that, because it's a pretty common situation in my family. The first thing that would have been different, the fear would have dictated that, no, we're paying by the hour. We probably wouldn't have even done that. We would have gone, no, we want a price for the whole thing,
Correct.
Which is, I can see, is quite unloving.
In a way,
potentially in this situation.
He doesn't know whether there's rock underground, or he doesn't know.
That's right. Yeah. So there's that. And then, okay, so if he had done a bad job, there were things that were an issue, I can just see,
Well, he hasn't done a bad job.
No, okay.
He did try to make some compromises which would have weakened the fence,
so
which I then had to discuss with him about.
Yes. So those issues that you wanted to discuss, I can see that I would have just got irate and really angry with him.
Yeah.
And that's what my family had done. And then the relationship is just like severed and cut, and that's it.
And it still may be.
Yes, but no, you've given him every chance. And
but I'm going to give him every chance to respond to love in the process. Does it make sense? Still might end up that he has nothing to do with us.
Sure.
But it'll only be because of his actions, not because of mine. Make sense? Now, when you're taught that fear should guide your actions, can you see in that course of situation, there's so many things that could go wrong. So many things that could go wrong. Like, he asked us to use the excavator and the dozer to clear the fence line. We could have gone in fear and worry and gone, no, he's going to damage the dozer, he should do it himself, and that would have just added $5,000 to $10,000 to the price, probably of the thing, and also meant that we would have had to do more ourselves, right? There's so many ways in which fear can affect a project, and this is what most of you don't realise. We're trying to raise the issues of fear with you because it's practical. It's not just an emotional discussion. See, the trouble with a lot of people who have heard divine truth is they just think it's a discussion about emotions, but it's not. It's a discussion about your life and the practicalities of life and how love, or a lack of it, influences the outcome of your life. Like, love is practical. It's a practical thing to be loving.
And I think we even had an example of that in the gully this morning, where initially it was all pretty
bad
workflow. Everyone was in their own tunnel of themselves, like completely isolated, weren't you guys? No one was very connected to the job. It was all just like drudgery. And then we had a bit of a talk, and a number of you connected to it. It feels so overwhelming. I feel like we're never going to get through this. Like Brits was saying, this is like my sin. It's all just the world is in a shambles and so
entangled
is
and
my
full
soul.
of thorns.
We'll never get there, and it's hard, and I'm uncomfortable, and like within an hour when I came back, boom, everyone was like working just by some just acknowledging it, some of you cried about it, and then even the managers had some things to reflect on. How were we managing that? You know, you guys were like, oh, we were pandering, trying to make them feel better, rather than just encourage them to have their feel, like just tell them you've got to have your feelings or not do the job. There's 2 options, you know, that kind of thing. And then, so the practical application of it changed the whole job. The whole job. A lot got done under really harsh conditions, actually. The conditions got worse because it got hotter, and you know the hill was still just as steep, and but actually quite a lot got done.
So it just shows you, doesn't it, that everything brought into more harmony with love makes everything more practical, easier. Anything that's acted in harmony with fear just makes things more difficult and harder. And that's why fear needs to be addressed. It also is why God doesn't make you feel safe when you feel unsafe. And you believing God should is only going to attract other people other than God, spirits other than God into your life.
Guys, years of my life I've spent under the influence of spirits because I just didn't want that one thing, to not feel afraid. And they're like, oh yeah, we'll help you feel less afraid, but gee, there's a cost to that, I can tell you. There's, you know, they wanted a lot of things in return from me.
That's right.
Like what?
You think about it, Anna.
Yeah, what do you think?
What does a person who's a bully want from a person who's afraid?
Power.
Power. So they get power. What else? Because there's many other things. So if you know a person's afraid, you're here, you're this person who's less afraid, or seemingly less afraid of that thing. Right? So, like, Mary's afraid of being one of the 14. There's no one else on the planet aside from one of the 14 who's afraid of being one of the 14. Right? So the spirits all know Mary's afraid of being one of the 14. So Mary's there afraid of being one of the 14.
I don't want to feel.
She doesn't want to feel that. Right?
Somebody rescue me.
What do these spirits get to feel if Mary stays in that state and doesn't want to change that state and doesn't want to realise that that state isn't actually truth? If she stays in that state, what do the spirits who are influencing her get to feel? Power is one of them. Why do they get to feel power? Well, they can say things to Mary that control her life. They can just make her feel more afraid about being one of the 14, and then she'll go and
they're more in charge of my decisions.
They make stupid decisions. Right. Yep. Okay, so there's one thing they can do. Well, what else do they do? You think about the dynamic between a person who's afraid and a person who's less afraid.
What does the person who's less afraid often feel about?
You want to have a stab, Brittany? Yep.
They get to feel superior.
Okay, they get to feel superior, better than you. Okay, what else do they get to feel? So they're, in their mind, they're here now, aren't they? You're here. You're little scared afraid. I'm not so afraid, right? Charlie?
They could possibly get to feel good about themselves because they're helping you.
Right, so they get to feel like I'm helping the person.
I'm a good guy.
I'm a good guy.
And what do I feel? Oh, they are a good guy.
Yeah, I need them, and this person needs me. I get to feel this person who is actually being abusive gets to also feel good while they're abusing you. Right? Not very good, is it? Right? What else? Says Lee. Just pass the other mic up.
Yeah.
They can just be making you a figure of fun by laughing at you.
Okay, so they can. Any person who feels superior is going to feel condescending, ridiculing towards you, aren't they?
What's that do for you?
What does it do for you and your self-esteem?
Yeah. Well, it destroys you.
Right, it makes you feel worse about yourself, doesn't it? Okay.
And more needy.
And more needy, ironically, for them to make you feel better. Yeah, because you're unwilling to feel the feelings yourself. More needy for them. So what you end up doing is binding yourself emotionally. If you're a person in fear, you bind yourself to the person who has less fear. Right? And in doing so, now that person's controlling your life. So do you have free will anymore? No.
Well, you've given it up.
You've given
voluntarily.
It up. You've voluntarily given it up. You don't have free will anymore. You're under the will and control of another. How does it feel for a person who wants power to have lots of people under their will and control? It feels very powerful. So they feel more emboldened, more superior.
And let's do it with more people.
Not just with one person, but others.
Yeah.
Isn't that what they do? Okay. So can you see the situation's now getting worse and worse, isn't it? Started off with one little thing and then...
And I feel worse and worse about myself and more helpless because I'm making myself helpless because I just don't want to feel fear.
Now what's this person going to do with their will? The person who's in the fear. They're going to put their will in the hands of... So if these people say, do this, this person's going, okay.
Yeah.
This person say, do that. This person, the one in fear goes, okay, I'll do that. Right? What ends up happening there is the person in fear is getting more and more like a puppet than a person. Aren't they? Controlled, manipulated. Now,
detuned from their personality.
Now, if you're the person who's abusive and you know that the people around you are going to get more and more, like, feel worse and worse about themselves and be more and more able to be manipulated, what's going to be your tendency? You're going to try to manipulate them even further. You're going to try to push the boundaries of what is possible.
You get threatening. Threatening to invoke more fear, so the spirits get more threatening, or the abuser gets more threatening to invoke more fear because they know that's the thing you're not going to feel. So they threaten you, and then they offer a supposed solution which you follow because you don't want to feel
Now, this
afraid.
sounds like a lot of governments today, doesn't it? They threaten you with a problem and they offer you the solution they always wanted to offer you in the beginning that you wouldn't accept before because you weren't afraid enough to accept it. You know, how many people in Melbourne, in Victoria, were happy to accept a year of lockdown under the guise of COVID? Now, do you think any other situation would cause them to experience and be willing to accept a year of lockdown?
No.
There'd be protests in the streets, wouldn't there?
Yeah.
Any other situation, but you can't protest in the street because you might get COVID. You see, so perfect situation, right? Perfect situation to go, okay, we tell them there's a problem and then we provide the very solution we want to do, which is lock everybody down, then we don't have to do a lot. And we'll get a lot of other things done because people are not around, right? We'll be able to do other things. While they're worried about their health and while they're worried about death, we can get a lot of other things done that just go under the radar, which, by the way, did actually happen. Yeah.
Would you like to what other things are you talking about?
I can not deal with most of the world's economies went terribly badly during COVID, right? Most of the government economies went badly during COVID, but did you care? No, the average person didn't care. But in a normal situation, the average person would say, no, things are going bad here, we need to have this sorted, right? Right? Your free will. Did you care that your free will was actually completely restricted during that period of time? It went on for nearly 2 years, right? Did you care during that time very much? Like, normally you would have been out there protesting about it. Any other situation you would have protested about it. But because you felt safer, because of your fear made you feel like you were safer, right, being home, you were happy to be home, right? And then what else did they do? All of the companies that are to do with social media, all of them made extremely high profits. And on top of that, all of the companies associated with the medical industry also made extremely high profits. And most of the investments for the medical industry came from the social media companies. So they actually both made a profit at the same time from the same thing. Now, you add all that up, and who benefited from you being in lockdown or you being restricted? A lot of big business, a lot of big enterprise and governments all benefited. When you look at a problem, the best thing in the world to do is to look at who benefits the most. Right? And they are the people who caused it. Yeah? Okay. Interesting. So, like I said to Mary, this is highly likely, and I said this as soon as it came out, COVID, I said it's highly likely it's been manufactured, and highly likely that the governments are making the choices they're making so that the restrictions upon the people are higher so that people accept more control in the future. Right? And what happened? Exactly that. So COVID wasn't the problem. It was what you accepted in your fear state that was the problem. Your points of conversation became about COVID. We got bombarded, with our email about why aren't you talking about COVID? Why do I want to talk about COVID? It's just one of many tiny problems, right? Orchestrated by humankind to make you feel more afraid. That's the thing to talk about, right? Why would I want to specifically talk about COVID? People were emailing me saying, "Oh, COVID's affecting our soul condition. Why are you promoting or not promoting?" Well, some people thought we were not promoting.
So we
had criticism on both sides.
Comment on vaccines, then we were either irresponsible for not condoning them or irresponsible for not condemning them. It didn't matter. We should have had an opinion, and lots of people had. We should have, we were wrong. Basically, full stop.
But as it turns out, we were right. But anyway, again, all motivated by fear in one direction or the other. So all the people who refused to take medication, fear was the dominant motivation. It wasn't love. It wasn't free will. It was fear that dominated most of those decisions. And also, the most people who did take medication, fear dominated those decisions too. So all of the people who didn't take the vaccine and all the people who did, for the majority of the decisions were dominated by fear, not by love. Right? Love didn't dominate the decision to, not take the vaccine, but love didn't dominate the decision to take the vaccine either. Love didn't correctly assess for the majority of people what was really going down, right? And as a result, whether you took a vaccine or not, at the end of the day, fear drove your actions. So therefore, your life can only get worse. So for many people who didn't take a vaccine, life got worse, and for many people who did take the vaccine, life got worse. Because fear dominates the actions. And any person who tells you otherwise, that fear is worth considering, is a false teacher, because it isn't worth considering. Right? And whenever a person or a company or an industry or a government or whomever tell you that you should act out of fear about something, you should definitely not follow them. Because you're in a state of acting out of fear, you are not going to act in harmony with love. And love is the thing that's going to solve the problems, isn't it? It's not fears. Yeah. And in the end, can Mary and I tell you what to do with your body?
I have a moral problem with that. I think that would be wrong if there's certain principles that you could talk to you about.
I can talk to you about the principles about what
if I said, Granny, you should do this,
that's wrong.
How am I respecting your gift of free will then?
Yeah.
And your responsibility to gain self-responsibility.
Yeah.
To figure it out emotionally with God for yourself. Yeah.
So you can see again that the fear thing, almost in every situation you can look at on earth, love hardly enters any situation. It's mostly fear, one way or the other. that enters the situation. So what we see often is people are polarised into two different actions, but ironically, fear is the dominating thing that causes both actions.
Yeah. I felt COVID was kind of crazy like that, because just there were people in panics on either side, just panic, and then they'd panic at each other and
attack each other, abuse each other. Not be able to think clearly. What is the cause of this? What is its solution? Not able to think clearly about what I should do personally, because fear is dominating every action. So you're not going to think clearly in those situations. Yeah. So during it, Mary was saying, I think we should go and get a vaccine. And I'm saying, I don't want to. Not yet, I don't want to. When somebody offers me a vaccine that is actually done the way old vaccines were done, which is actually done by adding something to your body that triggers an immune response that's actually not genetically modified, then I'll consider it. I might not do it still, but I might consider it. But when somebody's offering me a vaccine that's obviously a genetically modified thing, it has not been tested at all, right? And all the tests, it was quite clear that most of the tests that they had done were falsified results. And I know the motivation is control of people, money driven, and to get power over people, to shut people's free will down. And I know those are the motivations. Why would I go and get a vaccine? It's dangerous for me to get a vaccine when those are the motivations. It's a dangerous thing.
Just to correct, the Mary was saying we should go and get a vaccine for 1 week.
Well, at the beginning,
yeah.
At the beginning.
Yeah. Wasn't a long.
But after I had the discussion with Mary could obviously see the logic.
And also, I just needed to work through some feelings
that
were being manipulated in me by the media, which was not about my fear for my own safety. It was a fear for the safety of others. That's what got manipulated in me.
Yeah.
And then when I researched that, I'm like, that's not even real.
But it's not even that. If you're being motivated by a fear of loving others, then it means you're not loving others.
Correct.
Because there's no fear in loving others.
And also there's a manipulation of shame in me, where I have a feeling that I'm harmful to others, that I need to release, and then this media thing could manipulate that in me because I wasn't feeling about it.
So the question then becomes, how can I, when I'm full of guilt and shame, fear, worry, and then the whole world is also full of guilt, fear, shame, worry, and then there's a whole group of power-based brokers who are all bullies trying to affect the free will of others, blah, 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 and you add that entire situation together and you go, yeah, it sounds really good that I should make a decision. Being sarcastic now.
It's very unusual.
It's very unusual. Isn't it really good that I make a decision in harmony with all that fear? How is that ever going to be good? It's not going to work, is it? How can it work? It's not going to work for me, but it's also not going to work globally, right? For a society. So this whole thing about my parents make me feel safe. And only have to make me feel it. They don't have to actually create safety. They only have to make me feel it. It is a way in which your lives have been destroyed.
Yeah, totally.
Right? And yet most people still buy off the premise that a person who loves you makes you feel safe.
Yeah.
How many times do you watch a movie where it's a romance and a person is asked, why do you like the person? They go, because they make me feel
safe.
Yeah.
Secure.
Nina.
It's just reflecting on how we look for heroes for that reason, right? Like somebody wants to be a hero, we need a hero because we need to be rescued, and
that's right. It makes you open to manipulation and control. Yeah. This is why gurus are on the planet, right? Manipulation and control. This is how religions got established. Manipulation and control. It's, political leaders. Yep. Manipulation and control. Yeah. just because you're unwilling to deal with your fear, really. And you want when you're unwilling to deal with fear, you want the illusion of safety rather than actual safety. You want the illusion of it. Yeah, and you want it to be real easy. You want somebody else to do it for you. Rather than you make loving decisions and choices that you have to engage. You know, in the situation with a neighbour and the situation last week with the fence with Marcus, we have to make some loving decisions, that we have to make some choices, and we have to be willing to have the conflict. That's what love would do. Every time you do something different to that, you're not being loving, right? The outcome can only be bad. Yeah. Okay. Have we covered it enough, that point?
Such a good point.
Can you see you could talk for weeks about that? It's like, just this one injury that our parents have created for the majority of us in this, and the one belief of love that we have, pardon me, you think you put it on God, really, is what you're doing. You're going, unless God's going to make me feel safe, I'm not having a bar of God. That's really the underlying feeling, is that I want something else other than God. Right? So, you know, we talked earlier, not recorded, but we talked earlier about how many people around the world are listening to divine truth, believing they understand it, and then starting to teach others it out of harmony with love. Why do they do that? Hello?
Well, we had lots of reasons, but this is one of those reasons. Because if you've got a lot of people in fear, then you can have all of these emotions that we listed, like the superiority, the control,
this dynamic we talked about with the spirits and me.
100%.
That gets to play out. And the person in fear, just like I was, is like, well, I can't possibly feel fear. I need somebody to take away that feeling. If they do, they must love me.
Or I need someone to reassure me.
Help me feel like I can do it.
Yeah, let's have let's have an emotional clearing workshop.
Please don't. Sorry. It's not divine truth.
It's a hotbed of other things, though, that can happen in that state because of the motivations of the people involved.
Exactly. It's a recipe for disaster.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. In the guise
of helping.
It's a recipe for disaster. And most people will engage it.
Yeah.
Most people will engage it because of their own fears, of what they feel they're personally capable of doing or whatever. They'll engage it. They think their fears are real and they engage it.
Yeah.
Right? But it's a recipe for disaster. You're putting yourself, because fear is driving the decision, you are now less safe. These people are not making you safe, you know.
And like such a beautiful lesson for me to like learn emotionally, because intellectually you can hear something, but when you emotionally get that the person who loves me will not take away my fearful feeling addictively, that is very freeing, and it helps you notice who's loving and who's not.
Very rapidly.
So quickly. Because if someone offers you this, here, I'll help you get away from that.
Even that.
Oh, I thought you were like, shut up, Mary.
No. Just even like, calm down, you're okay.
Yep, and we do it, and I watch everybody do it with each other, but that's not loving each other. No. You know, when you get that emotionally, it also makes you so, like something I've often said to Jesus over the years, even before I was properly worked through this issue, is something that I found very attractive in him, is that he never had this attitude towards me of like, oh, you can't handle it. You know, he always had the opposite, which is, you've got some feelings, you can deal with them.
Yep, God made you to deal with them.
God made you capable. You're as capable as anyone else. No one else in my life had ever told me that. So that in itself had an appeal, but it just took me a while to get emotionally to the point where I agreed with him, you know. So still seeking out the reassurance from spirits. And very angry with God, because feeling that,
It's one of the main reasons for people's anger with God.
God is sort of requiring of me to feel these feelings that I think I shouldn't have to, I can't cope with, I'll never get through.
Mummy and Daddy never made me feel these things.
Mum and Dad said that was unreasonable, or, you know, you shouldn't, you know.
Yep.
Love means never feeling uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Or Fernando. One or the other.
Okay. Isn't it so that when you feel fear, you attract events that will trigger your fear by the law of attraction?
When you start feeling fear, you won't attract events anymore.
When
Yeah,
you
but if you
resist
don't,
it.
If you're not feeling it, yes,
no,
you will.
yeah, if you have fear, you don't feel it.
If you have fear but you don't feel it, you will attract events that
Yeah.
make you feel afraid. If you feel your fear, you will stop attracting events that make you feel afraid. I know which one I'd prefer.
Yeah.
Yes. Anna?
This emotional clearing session, is this something to come and someone else is going to fix the feelings for you, or what is it?
Isn't this what you do in your therapy, Anna?
No.
Help people get into their feelings?
Yes.
Yeah.
To feel them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what we're referring to as problematic.
Yeah.
Oh, can you say something more about that? Why is that problematic?
We think about what you're doing. You've got to think about the principles that you've already been taught and then what you choose to do with them because you think it's going to make your life or somebody else's life easier. Firstly, by setting yourself up as the person who's trying to help another person feel their feelings, you're basically saying you're more emotionally open than they are. Is that an actual truth? Because I've said to you quite clearly, you're not emotionally open. So they're actually presuming it's the truth. Because otherwise they wouldn't be coming to you for help. They're presuming it's the truth. You presume it's the truth, but I've said to you quite clearly it's not. Right? It's not a truth. How can you help somebody emotionally if you're not open emotionally yourself? Can you see it's a hypocritical act, but also it's also not logical to think that you can help somebody when you're closed. Right? So the need to help somebody is driven by a different emotion on your part. Secondly, the person who's coming to you, what do they want from you? They want to feel that they're going to be helped feeling their emotions. Does God help you feel your emotions? No. He says, you feel your emotions, they're yours. God doesn't participate in the feeling of your emotion. He agrees with you feeling your emotion. He doesn't participate in it. The only emotions he participates in is the emotions you feel for him. Right? And his feelings for you. They're the ones he participates in. None of which are injured, and none of which could be classified as emotional clearing. Right? So, God does not do it. So why does Anna do it? So Anna believes that people need it, but God doesn't believe people need it.
True.
So why does Anna feel people need it? So really Anna's saying God doesn't know what he's doing. You understand? And this is the general attitude of the people who are doing these things. They really feel that God doesn't know what he's doing and that they do. Now, there's a difference between how do you actually help somebody feel their emotions?
What is true
You
assistance?
can't feel their emotions with them because they have to do that. Every time they try to engage you feeling their emotions, they are now saying they're incapable of feeling them themselves. By saying that, they're telling themselves a lie. By telling themselves a lie, they're in complete disharmony with truth. How do you get beyond that point? How have I got you, any time you felt an emotion, beyond that point? If you run.
I'm just thinking that you tell us the truth about that.
I tell you the exact truth.
Yeah.
Right? That's number one, the exact truth. To tell you the exact truth, I have to know it.
Yeah.
Don't I? Then I have to be able to tell you it, right? Firstly, that's first. What else? So, Jada.
That you're capable of dealing with it.
I tell you that, no, I don't need to share in your emotions. Your emotions are your emotions. You need to have them and you are capable. Right, what does the prayer say? You are the pinnacle of God's creation. You are capable people. God created you to be capable. God doesn't want you to feel incapable. He created you to be capable, which includes capable to feel your own emotion. If I help you feel your emotion, what am I doing? I am saying to you, you're incapable.
And actually creates a sense of dependency.
Yes. Correct. I'm also saying I'm
better than
you as well. Right? How am I saying I'm better than you? I'm saying I'm capable of something that you're not capable of. Which is it, and it's actually not true. We are both equally capable of feeling our emotions. You're just as capable as I am. I can feel mine. By the way, I can't feel yours. Only you can feel yours. So when I'm saying I can help you feel yours, I'm lying to you. I cannot help you feel yours. You have to help yourself feel yours. I can't help you feel yours. Right? There's nothing I can do that will help you feel your emotion. And if you believe that is true, you won't feel all of your emotion. Because your emotion is yours. And only you can feel it to completion. Right? I can't do anything to help you aside from telling you the truth and being loving in my interaction with you. They're the only ways I can help you. So if I'm a helper, the only way I can help you is by knowing that I'm equal to you, knowing that you're just as capable as I am to feel your feelings, knowing that you can feel every feeling no matter how bad it is by yourself. You do not need me or anybody else to help you feel. You don't even need God to help you feel. God created you as a completely independent, emotionally independent being to him. You do not need God to help you feel. You are the person who determines whose feelings you have. You are the person who controls your feelings. Now, if I am telling you anything different to that through either my words or my actions, am I in harmony with truth? No, I'm not. So I can do all this in the guise of helping someone with divine truth, and I'm not. So what would be my motive? If I now know that to be the truth, what can only be my motive for helping you feel your emotions?
Feed your own addictions.
To feed my own addictions. And to...
Get power.
No, feed yours.
I feed my addictions. Yeah.
You understand?
Yeah.
Not just to feed my own, because obviously you're coming to me, you're feeding yours.
Yeah.
So what are your addictions? What are the reasons why you're coming to me? I'm setting myself up as a person who's going to help you feel your emotions. You're coming to me. What am I teaching you? Why did you come to me in the first place?
I don't feel like I can.
That's right. You direct disharmony with the prayer. You don't think you can.
Yeah.
Right? So that's in direct disharmony with what I'm teaching. Right? The fact that you don't think you can, well, that's something we're going to talk about. Right?
You need more truth
You
on
need
that.
more truth about that, because that's like me helping you is just going to enforce the lie that you can't, that you need some help to do it. You understand? Why else might you need some help to do it? Because you've been taught from childhood, mum and dad, that a person who loves me helps me not feel things that I have to feel for myself. We're taught that right from childhood. We're taught. So obviously I believe I'm loving to you by helping you, and you believe coming to me means you're being loved. Completely wrong. You're not being loved. You're in an emotional addiction with a person. You are not being loved. You are being abused. You're not being loved. You're being abused. But you believe you're being loved. Right? That's a problem. Let's talk about that. You understand? But again, talking about that, I've got to highlight the truth of that. Every time you put yourself in a position where you think that I'm loving you when I'm not, that's not going to help you feel your emotions. That's in fact going to get you away from feeling your emotions. You understand?
And it doesn't help with that assessment we talked about earlier, that's really important to my safety.
That's right.
If if I'm presenting myself to Jad as, here, I love you, I'll help you deal with your emotions.
You are now unsafe, Jad.
And you can't assess the love. If you think, oh,
Yeah.
that's love, then you're always looking for that as love, and you're not actually accurately assessing the love in other situations as well.
Now, a teacher who knows the truth knows they can't help you. I can't help you. I've already told you that. I can't help you. All I can do is tell you the truth. Right? Your sins are your problem, not mine. Right? Whether you accept God's love or not is up to you, not me. I have no control over it except by saying the truth about it. That's the only way I can help you. The only way I can help you deal with anything is by saying the truth about the thing. You follow? There's no other way I can really help you. So spending time with you, nursing you through your feelings, it's not going to help you. It's going to make you a dependent of mine. Right? Now, I know on earth a lot of people want to become somebody else's dependent. But do you think God would think that I'm doing the right thing if I'd made you mine? Of course not. So I can't do that. Now, because I don't do it, what does a lot of other people do? They set themselves up to do it. They hear divine truth and then they set themselves up to do it. But really what they're doing, they don't understanding, but they're acting in direct disharmony with divine truth practically in their own lives, because they're acting in an addiction, which is in direct opposition to what I'm teaching. So you're actually breaking the law more, right? You're thinking you're doing a good thing, but actually breaking the law more. Not only that, you're doing it to somebody else. So now you're teaching. You set yourself up as a teacher. You're teaching the person to do something that is making them weaker. Not stronger, weaker. How can it have any good benefit? There is no benefit. The reason why I don't do it is because there is no benefits. That's why I don't do it with you. You know, when you guys are all chatting about your feelings, do you very often see me get involved in terms of sharing with your feelings or anything? Do you ever hear me sharing my feelings very often? When I do share my feelings, am I trying to get your help to feel my feelings? No, I'm just explaining a situation, aren't I?
Yeah.
That's the only thing I'm doing, right? It's an opportunity for you to get to know me, all my feelings, but I don't do it so you can share in them, right? Because I know the truth is you don't have my feelings. The truth is one day you and I can be closer because we can feel each other's feelings if we choose to, but I can't feel your feelings for you. I can't make your feelings go away. I can't nurse you through your feelings, because if I do, I'm teaching you to be a dependent. I've got to teach you how to be a self-responsible adult, because that's what God's trying to teach me. You understand? Yeah. Can you see that, Anna? Now, can you see, when you set yourself up to do these particular things, you're not understanding God's truth. And yet you're saying you're doing it for the purpose of helping the person with God's truth. So that's not true. It's an illusion, but it's not, and it's certainly not true, right? And there's many people who do this with groups of people and things like that, all out of harmony with love. That's why I don't do it. You know, a lot of people think I just hasn't got enough time to do it. Well, that's true too. Right? I haven't got enough time to emotionally, nurse millions of people on the planet. Do you? No. So why are you doing it with one? Like, my feeling is if you can't do it with millions, you shouldn't be doing it with one. You understand? There is a principle of economy there that God engages. If God can't do it with 1 million people, he won't do it with one person. And it makes logical sense as to why. Right? If he can do it with one person but not 1 million, then he's being unequal with one. So it's pretty obvious why he can't do it. Right? If I do it with one, I can't do it with 1 million, then I'm being unequal with one. One thing I can do with 1 million people is tell them the truth. Right? I can tell them how to receive God's love. I can do that with 1 million people. 1 billion people nowadays, they don't even have to be face to face anymore, right? You can do it with billions of people. But you can't do the other with billions, so why are you doing it with one? So there's many, many good reasons as to why it's not proper, why it's not in harmony with God's love. to do these things. But in our own wisdom, and this is how everybody is, with their own wisdom, which is really their own arrogance, isn't it? Their own definition of love kicking in, which is really saying, my definition of love is above God's. I'm going to do something that God doesn't do. Right? So you're really saying that your definition of love is above God's. So a lot of people don't realise there's this internal stuff going on that's demonstrating a condition of the soul which is way out of harmony with the truth being taught. And we're making these choices and decisions go, I'm going to help these people and I'm going to do this because that's what I think I needed. And I'm saying to Anna, no, you didn't need it either. You don't need somebody doing that with you either. God's already giving you what you need. Make sense?
Yes, it does.
And dealing with your emotions, once you come to terms with the fact that you don't need anybody else, that's ironically the first time you start doing it for yourself. Mm-hmm. Yep. And it's also, ironically, the first time that you start clearing things properly. Because the emotions get a lot more raw when you realise there's no one helping you. You got them for yourself. And then you go, whoa, like now you feel the weight of your own emotional burden and you also feel the weight of your own sin. You haven't got anybody to share it with, which is appropriate. You shouldn't have anybody to share it with. It's yours. Your emotions are yours. Your will is yours. Your sin is yours. Nobody else should have anything to do with it. You need to do it. Yep. Yeah. And this is what, a lot of the people who who email us say, oh, I'm doing this and I'm doing that. They're expecting me to say it's wonderful. And I'm going, what are you doing? You're destroying the principles of God's truth without even hardly knowing that you are by taking these actions. And most people are not aware they are. So the way to help a person is to be truthful, to love them and be truthful. What does loving them look like? It's not meeting their addictions. It's not telling them that they need you. It's not telling them that they need anybody else other than themselves and God, actually. That's all they ever need. And of course, at some point, their soulmate, if they engage themselves. They're the only things they need. And if you tell them anything different, and really what you're doing is you're undermining God's truth on earth, which is what you're doing, Anna. You understand?
No.
No? You don't think you are, from what I just said?
Well,
just use your microphone.
Oh, thanks. Well, to begin with, I don't work with clients anymore for a couple of years back, but except for one. But I'm doing just that. I believe, I could be wrong, but telling her.
Why is she dependent on you?
She's not.
Well, she is. Do I come to you for help from me?
No.
When you come to help from me, do I actually give you any help?
No.
What? What help do I give you?
Truth.
Right. Isn't that giving you help?
Yes.
But do I give you anything other than that? No. So do I listen to your stories?
No. No.
No. Not really, do I?
No.
No. Your stories are your stories. You need to feel them, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I might be interested in your life and I might ask you questions then to get to know you. But that's developing a friendship. That's not the same as me helping you. You understand? So with all of you, Mary and I have asked you questions about your life. What happened here? What happened there? Why'd you do this? Why'd you do that? What went on there? We're interested in you, so we're trying to find out things about your life. But I don't do that for the purpose of trying to trigger you emotionally. I don't do that for the purpose of trying to make you see some things that you don't see. I do that for the purpose of getting to know you. You understand?
Yes, I do know. Yeah.
Doing it for any other purpose? They're dependent.
say that again. If you're
doing it for any other purpose creates dependency.
Yeah.
So you think about why you set up your group in Sweden.
The Divine Truth Study Group?
Yeah. Yep. If you're honest with yourself, you'll see that you quite like having dependence.
What does that mean? I quite like having dependence.
You like people depending on you.
Ah, yeah. True.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's an addiction. Yep. And you've got to be careful that your motivations to help people isn't based upon wanting a dependent. Yep. Now, in some other cases, like other people we know, they want power. This is even worse than wanting a dependent, right? But even a dependent, you've got to consider, why do I like having a dependent? Does it make you feel good about yourself for having a dependent, or are you just helping people? Like, what I'm trying to do with you guys is just share truth with you. I like doing it, but it's not like, if, as you well know, if you leave tomorrow, I don't chase you down and follow you up. And, you know what I mean? I don't keep track of you and keep in contact.
I hardly know anything about your guys' lives apart from,
what you share with us.
What you tell us.
Isn't that sort of appropriate in a way?
Yeah.
Because if you don't want to share things with us, we don't know them. It's only what we feel from you and what you share with us. That's all we know. Yeah. Quite often that's a significant amount.
Yes.
Because we can feel a lot, right? But it's not done for the purpose of like creating dependency or followers or any of those things, right? Yeah.
A lot of people get a sense of worth out of having a dependent, being a parent.
Yeah, that's why most people become parents.
Having clients that you help.
I actually think that I did that because I felt loved.
By them.
Oh, by them, yes.
Well, felt wanted by them, yes, or needed by them, which is not the same as feeling love, really.
Exactly, but I sort of did that mix, I think.
Yeah, partially, but there's other reasons too. Because to do it, you've got to have some level of arrogance. You've got to have some level of believing that you know better than they do. And that's also an issue that you face. So you also got to believe you know better than God does. So that's also an issue you face.
Isn't it funny, like, because you and I don't, because we view everyone as equal, people often then view us as lesser than them. Yeah. Because they're used to, because we don't encourage dependency, we don't view ourselves, we just, as you know, like all of you, we just behave like you're just our equal. And then a lot of people then treat us like that they know better than us, because we're not in some kind of power game with them or superiority.
They expect Jesus to be in a power game with them.
Yeah. Or to be superior, or to come with airs and graces and like tell you how it is and make you feel like you're dependent, that you need something from us, that you're not just a sister or a brother. Yeah. So often you seek out these roles because you do have some of that injury where you feel like, no, I want that feeling from others, that I'm somehow the expert or needed, and that's what I build my identity and my worth and my sense of being loved, which is very injured. Yes. And lovable.
Doing things for others is all about just giving a gift, isn't it? At the end of the day. And anything else that meets an addiction is not a gift. Still not convinced, Anna? Interesting how my comments to you frequently go ignored because you feel I'm not right. And I find that really fascinating that you and both Ulf and you actually have the feeling that when you disagree with me, then it must mean that I'm wrong. Rather than saying that maybe I'm seeing a lot more than you are about a situation, you automatically believe that you see more than I do. Yes. And I find that very interesting. And this is something that a lot of people do with me, where they think, how many times, like with Andrew Robb, I had a conversation with them about their family. At the time, they thought I was wrong. Most of you at some stage have thought what I'm saying to you is wrong. And I find that interesting. Why are you listening to a person who's teaching you something while you're at the same time thinking he's wrong most of the time. It doesn't make any sense to me why you do that. I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't come along regularly to see a person who I think, when they make personal comments about my life, that they're actually wrong. I would be looking at my personal life and going, maybe he's seeing more than I do. Mm-hmm. That's what I would be doing, which is why I'm progressing and many of you don't, right? Because that's what God does with me. Shares things with me, tells me things that are wrong. I have to look at them, and I do, right? And that's what really progress is all about. Getting to see the things you can't see, and somebody else, that's how you help a person, by actually helping them see the truth of things they can't see.
You reach a point in your progression where you just feel so grateful for that, because you realise, wow, I would have gone on thinking that I knew everything about this situation, that my version was correct.
Yeah.
For the
centuries,
possibly the rest of my life on earth,
yeah.
Unless this one person was kind enough to say, hey, there's this big gaping thing here that you keep avoiding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's also indicative of the fact that you want an emotional interaction with a person. You want it to be some kind of emotional attachment. And I find that interesting because frequently that's the time when there's no emotional attachment. Because there's an addiction to an emotional attachment, not an actual emotional attachment. An actual emotional attachment is my heart is filled with love for the person. There's my emotion. That's an emotional attachment. Any other thing where my heart is filled with an addiction for a person, not an emotional attachment anymore. You understand? The trouble is our parents have taught us that is an attachment. Yeah. Right? And so we believe that's what an attachment looks like. But it's not. Attachment is my heart is filled with love for whomever. Not that they love me. Not that they need anything from me. Not that they want anything from me. None of that. My heart is feeling for them. That's a proper attachment. And it doesn't need anything in return. So, again, these are things that our parents have taught us, right? That we then say, well, this is what love is. This is what love would do. And it doesn't. So there's many, many people around the world listening to Divine Truth and then going, Dharma, that James Benzing guy, Denny, and a number of others that we know, like...
Do you want to name names?
Well, I'm happy to, because they're all... This information applies to them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Robin Grisham. Who else?
Can't think of anyone.
Well, anyone who's setting themselves up in this regard...
Enrique.
Sorry?
Enrique,
yeah. Anyone who is setting themselves up in this regard does not understand divine truth. Does not. And the reason why they don't is they don't understand how they are themselves breaking the law, God's law, and how they're even breaking the law of love, which says, you are the pinnacle of God's creation. I believe and feel you are. You are capable of feeling your own emotions. You are capable of going through things with your own relationship with God. You are capable. The only way I can help you is by being truthful with you. And the only way I can know what the truth is by being more connected to God than you are. That's the only way I can know. Otherwise, we both know the same. Mm-hmm. And if I'm less connected to God than you are, then I know less. Right? So any person who sets them up in that regard, I would suggest, is often less connected to God than you are. And so you're going to a person who is less connected to God. They're connected to other things, spirits in particular, but they're less connected to God than you are, and yet you're asking them for advice. That is very unwise, and it's also and you're doing it because you want safety. You want the security of somebody telling you what to do every day or every week or every month. You want the security of somebody reassuring you you're on the right track, and you want the security of all that. But all you're doing is acting because your parents taught you that they will make you feel safe even when you're not. So it's actually driven by this underlying feeling that of needing the illusion of safety rather than actual safety. Yeah. God's already given you enough to deal with things. And all you need is a person who wants to share truth with you. God already wants to do it, but if you can't hear God, it's handy to have someone else. And all you need is a person who's willing to share the actual unadulterated truth with you. And that's as far as it goes. They don't need to share in your emotional experience with you. They don't need to help you, handhold you through the emotional experience. It can be helpful if they help trigger some of your emotions, right, through some things that they say or do. But like, when do I physically touch you to help you get through an emotion? How many of you have been personally, physically touched by me in order to help you get through an emotion? Right? So why are you letting a lot of other people do that to you? Right? No, I'm not saying don't go and get a massage. Go and get a massage if you want, but call it a massage. Di, you wanted to say?
So I've had this feeling.
Yep.
I wanted to help people.
Yep. Which is.
And went and did a counselling course and everything.
Yep.
Or 2.
Yep.
But I haven't felt right in doing it.
Right.
And I've been to counsellors, and, I've done the whole thing. I've been the person who wanted people to help me, and I've been the person who wants to.
Is there any harm in going to a counsellor?
Well, I didn't find them very helpful in the end.
Well, if they know more truth than you do, then it would be wonderful, wouldn't it? Isn't that true?
Yeah.
So the proviso of going to a counsellor is, do they know more truth than you do? Right? If they know more truth than you do, then go to them. It can help you.
So this is my question really, is how do I purify my desire?
By knowing more truth.
By knowing more truth, by being more connected to God.
Yeah,
by
of
being
course.
Truthful to people, just giving people truth.
That's right, giving people truth.
And loving them.
Not hand-holding them through an emotional experience.
Yeah.
I don't hand-hold you, and the reason why I don't is because you need to know that you're capable of having your own emotional experience. You don't need me to have it, right? You need truth to have it, but you don't need me to have it, right? Of course, you need somebody who's in a brighter state of truth than you are, and if that's me, then you need me. You know what I mean? But only for the sake of the truth, not for the emotion.
Yes.
You follow? Yep. And so this is an important factor that most people don't consider. When I look at the lives of the people who are so-called helping others, frequently they're in a darker state because they have higher addictive demands. And how can a person in a darker state help a person in a lighter state? I had a few months ago, well, a year ago or so now, 3 people rock up here. And 2 of them came because the third person encouraged them to, and the third person was saying, I'm helping these 2 people. I'm saying, no. I said to her directly, no, you're not. You're not. You're creating 2 dependents. You are the darkest person here. As soon as she rocked at my door, I'd never met her before. And I told her she's the darkest person among the 4 of us because she was the person believing she could help the others when she couldn't. Right? And she certainly can't help them by doing all this, hands-on healing kind of things. All you're going to do is get spirit-attached people in the end. And how good is that for your emotional work? Having a few dozen spirits attached to you, how is that going to help you feel your feelings? As Mary knows and other people know, it just harms you feeling your feelings, doesn't it?
Having spirits.
It's just like... terrible. Yeah. And having a person on earth that you're dependent upon is making your life more controlled by that person.
It's insidiously eroding any sense of confidence you have in your own self.
Correct.
And your abilities.
Yeah. And God wants you to know you're the pinnacle of His creation, you're in a chain of hierarchy between the person that you're honouring as you call them your teacher, but for the most part, they're not your teacher, they're your emotional need, your emotional crutch, which is different than a teacher. A teacher is just, here's the truth, take it or leave it, let's move on. The emotional crutch is, I need constant engagement with this person, right? I need emotional engagement from this person. I need them to love me. I need them to care for me. I need them to do things with me. I need to talk to them every day. I need, that's not even a friendship or a relationship, right? It's no good for you. Angela?
I read a long-term study on psychiatry and psychology and counselling, all of these modalities, and the result was that none of it has done any good at all. That's right, because they don't create a feeling in the people going of personal responsibility and ability. That's right. Yeah. Now, if they were modified to do so, then they'd be more beneficial. That's what I'm saying. That's what I said to Di. If the person's in a state of more truth, now it's worth happening. If they're willing to give you some counsel, get some counsel. How many times have you come to me because obviously you believe that I know more truth than you do, otherwise you wouldn't have asked, right? But if you think I do, and I then say, well, let's say I was an abusive person and you thought I did, how bad would that be? If you are not able to personally assess yourself what is an abusive person and what isn't, then how would it be when somebody says, I'm in a state of truth where I can share things with you, and you go, no worries, I'm going to accept that truth. You're going to just be accepting a bunch more lies, which is just going to harm your life. So you're going to have to be pretty sure they're in a more loving state than you are before you accept anything from them, wouldn't you? Yeah. How do you get sure that someone's in a more loving state? There's only two ways. One is that God informs you directly. The other is you get to know the person and work out whether they are or not. Feel them. And if you're incapable of feeling, then the first thing you're going to have to do is feel before you can do any of those two things, right? Can you see the importance of, a lot of times we think we get the principles of divine truth and then engage something completely opposite to it. Thinking we're doing the right thing, thinking we're motivated correctly, and often not the case. And I'm not saying that everybody that I've mentioned is even thinks they themselves are motivated correctly, because many of them aren't motivated correctly. But some are motivated, thinking they are motivated correctly, but it is quite clear if they had any connection with me whatsoever, I would tell them directly, you are not motivated correctly. Make sense? Yeah. Because a person who's motivated correctly does not believe that that somebody else needs them to feel some things. You don't need me to feel some things. You need truth shared with you. If you can't hear God, then you need to hear someone who's closer to God than you are. That's the only options you have. The Messiah's role isn't to develop a whole heap of needy followers. Messiah's role is to share God's truth with you. To share the truth that he first learnt with you. He was a student just like you need to be. Yeah? He's a student just like you need to be. Yeah? That's why we're all equal, right? Yeah. Of course, some of us are loved more by God than others. That's a different discussion. Because some of us have received more of God's love than others. The reason why we're going through these points relating to how our parents have taught us about love is because most of you don't realise how it's playing out in a lot of issues in your life almost every day, and you don't realise how insidious the teachings from your parents, how insidiously they've affected your life. See, the majority of you have thought up until recently probably, that dealing with your emotional hurt from your parents is the most important thing you're going to have to deal with about your parents. And that is not actually true. What is actually true is that the insidiousness of the teachings, rather than the emotional hurt, and the insidiousness of the teachings from your parents are what's playing the greatest part in your life, in your interference with your progress and your interference with your relationship with God. So it's
you could say the thing with abuse from parents of one type or another, emotional or sexual or physical, is that while those things are bad and are abusive, they're not the full extent of the abuse. The full extent of the abuse is the teachings that you've imbibed as a result of many things that were done in your childhood. Those teachings have caused you now to come to believe certain things about love which are not true. And in some ways now, how your mum and dad taught you and what you now to believe to be true about love are almost now completely independent of each other, right? Many of you have started to deal with some of your emotions relating to your parents, which is really, really good, but you haven't dealt with the effects of the teachings related to how your parents have taught you.
Last time we were here talking about this, you said we're controlled by an indoctrination that is almost invisible. I am controlled by an indoctrination that is almost invisible to me, and that's what you're referring to, isn't it? It's all this stuff we've imbibed about what love is, what a good parent does, what a good person does, how I get my worth, how
loving I am.
Yeah, all of that stuff. How our family's view is the superior view. And all of that's just living inside of us, and we don't even notice that it's there.
Yeah, we're like walking time bombs in a way. Because all of that stuff is there, ready to either explode or to be released. And you know what it's like with a container. If you don't release pressure, it eventually explodes. And what the majority of us are doing is when we're releasing the pressure that we identify as real, so such as like emotional abuse of parents or incestuous relationship and so forth, we release that pressure, but when it comes to the indoctrination of the teachings and the pressures that causes, we barely touch them. And so, and because for many of us we're just not even conscious of them. We act in them. I wouldn't call it subconsciously, I would call it, because frequently we're consciously acting in them, but we're acting in them because we believe them to be true, not for any other reason. And frequently they're completely untrue. So we're acting in a belief that we believe is true. So the complex thing we have to do with God is we have to work out, how do I get rid of my beliefs that things are true when God actually knows they're not true? And how do I accept from God the truth when I believe I know better? You know? And that is difficult. That's where you're going to find, in your own progress, it will always be your most strongest difficulty. Is the areas where you believe you're righteous and good when God knows that's not true. That's the areas that you're going to struggle with the most. And having someone who can tell you is a blessing, but frequently you won't hear them. Because for the same reason you can't hear God. You know, because fundamentally you want to believe what you believe is right rather than what God feels is right. And this is, you know, this is the difficulty of teaching people who are not yet properly feeling, because you're trying to show them, look, if you could only see that what you think is right is wrong, you might begin to question your own analysis of yourself. But while you're steadfastly holding on, because most of you are very frightened about changing your opinion about yourself, you know, and you think your injuries are you. So in other words, you think your character is your nature, and because you think your character, which is your ethics and your morality, you think that's your nature, you are emotionally bound to your viewpoint of your current ethics at the moment, rather than seeing the ethics are all wrong and the morality is all wrong. Because if somebody tells you it's wrong, you think they're telling you you're bad, right? Or bad to the core, I suppose is a better way of saying it. Because the reality is, addictions, we are bad. We act badly. We act out of harmony with love. We destroy things. We act badly towards the universe and towards people, and we harm them. So we are bad. And in our addictions, we are bad. But most of us are acting in the addictions thinking our addictions are good. So an example of that, I'm making my children feel safe. What a wonderful thing I'm doing. This is what a good parent does. You know, that's an example of a parent who's acting in their own addiction in disharmony with God's law, right? Because God's saying, no, if you feel unsafe, you've got to feel it for a start, whether you're safe or not, firstly. And secondly, the universe is safe, and if you believe it isn't, then you've got some issues. Thirdly, God's trying to help you see in the universe the only time you're unsafe is when sin's involved. And look at the sin here, and look at the sin there, and look at the sin there. Wow, this is a very unsafe environment. I need to leave it, or I need to deal with that, you know, change it. And unfortunately, the majority of us are going, no, my perception is true. You know, somebody's making me feel, Mary's making me feel safe. Wow, she loves me. You know, not going, Mary's making me feel safe. I should be suspicious. Ultimate motive for doing such a thing. You understand?
Yeah.
Because really I should be. Because it's an unloving thing to do from God's perspective. So I should be going, what's up? You know, with you? What's happening? Why are you trying to make me feel safe for? Yeah. And by the way, when you actually feel safe, you won't need anybody else to make you feel safe.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting thought too, isn't it?
Yeah.
Sandra.
You made a comment earlier, and it was just sort of like there were other questions above it, but I just thought it was such a thing because you said that the biggest thing we're angry about with God is not making us feel safe. Something along those lines. The majority of people are pissed off with God because God doesn't make us feel safe. I
That's
just
right.
never thought about it that way ever before.
Yeah. Well, you think about most of the angry interactions you have with God. You know, when the average person eventually, once they realise God exists, starts having angry interactions with God. Because they basically feel, why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you doing that?
Or you want me to do that?
If you exist, why aren't you fixing? If you exist, why aren't you fixing this and that? And for the most part, we're doing it because we feel unsafe, not understanding that the reason why we feel unsafe is because of human sin, not because of anything God's chosen to do. And remember, right from the beginning, I've said to you, human sin has to be fixed by humans. God is a human creation, therefore it must be fixed by humans. So God's not going to fix your sin for you. He's going to help you fix your sin, but you're going to have to fix your sin. Yeah. And you will be safe when you fix your sin. Every celestial spirit has fixed their sin, and they feel completely safe. In hell, they feel safe. They can go to hell and visit hell, they feel safe. But trust me, many of you, if you went to visit hell right now, you would feel very unsafe. It's not. There are some parts of hell that, unless you feel safe inside of you, you're going to feel pretty unsafe when you're there, right? To feel safe with inside of you, you need to get rid of your fears. Right, that has to happen. That's the only way it can happen. One of your fears is how you see yourself. So that has to go. How you see yourself needs to become how God sees you.
I believe we see ourselves like how our parents see us, right? Like
Oftentimes. Yeah, you think certain things are good when they're not, and you think certain things are bad when they're not, when they're actually good. Many of you have traits and qualities, personality and nature traits and qualities that I feel are wonderful, but you don't think they are. In fact, I see you oftentimes condemning yourself for them, right? You think they get you in trouble, things like that. So frequently we're not seeing ourselves how God sees us. But that's one of the things God wants us to do for our own happiness, is to start seeing what He created, yeah, and that it's wonderful. And if you can only see it and act upon those wonderful things, then things will be better. Yeah. Ulf?
You say that I have fear about how I see myself.
Definitely.
But is that a fear that I don't measure up to what I expect myself to be?
Not only that, it's also, you remember I talked to you earlier, it wasn't recorded, but I talked to you earlier, just in the break, about how whenever a personal truth is coming at you, your first thing is, I don't really believe that. That's, that person's not understanding me. They don't really get me, right? Many people feel that when you've shared some truth with them. That initial reaction, because it's not logical, logic would dictate that you listen to everything and then analyse, right? It's not logical, it's emotionally driven. It's driven by what's the emotion it's driven by. It's self-protection.
Yeah.
Why do you feel the need to protect yourself?
Yeah.
Because you feel afraid. Does that make sense? So most people feel afraid and they don't realise it. And the people who are more self-protective, more angry when you share truth with them, they're even more afraid than the average person, right? Because the average person is able to hear something about themselves, go, is that true or not? Have to look into that. That they don't have that initial feeling, oh, you don't understand me, you don't get me, or any of that kind of stuff. That kind of stuff is driven by an underlying fear that pervades everything within a person. Yep. So fear often dominates even our ability to receive a truth about ourselves. Yep. And it's probably the thing that dominates it the most, actually. And what God's trying to do is God's trying to go, I want to share the truth about you with you, because anything that we can fix is going to make you happier. That's what God's trying to say. And you're going, but I already think I'm good in that regard. And I feel a bit offended that you're telling me that I'm not. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And the offence is indicative of the anger, and the anger is indicative of the fear that drives it. So the offence is really saying, oh, how dare you think that about me? And underneath that anger is the fear. Oh, what if that's right? What am I going to do now if that is right? How is my worth destroyed if that is right? There's a whole heap of feelings there that drive that feeling like I've got to defend my castle is coming from these underlying fears. See, that's why people create castles in the first place, isn't it? Mm-hmm. If you think of it literally, physical castle. Mm-hmm. They put moats around it and spikes and big gates and blah blah blah. It's all because of fear, right? Fear of marauders, fear of bandits, fear of things. Right? Yeah. And when it comes to our personal psyche, our soul and how we see it, we've often got all these castles up because we want to see ourselves a certain way. We want to see ourselves, we want to see ourselves so that we don't have to see something different and actually do something about it. And for many of us too, when somebody tells us something about ourselves that we eventually accept, there's a lot of fear about, well, how do I deal with this now? I don't know what to do now. Now I can feel that in me. So eventually we get to the stage where you go, oh yeah, I can feel that. And then you go, well, how do I deal with that? What can I do to deal with that? And for most part, we don't know what to do. Mm-hmm. We don't know. It's in us. We can sort of recognise it is. But we go, but how is it going to get out of us? I don't really understand. And so then we've got to learn how things get out of us, which is all about feeling feelings. And for the most part, we've been taught from childhood, feelings are bad. Mm-hmm. Any bad feeling, like sadness or fear or, grief, shame, all these feelings that are actually healing feelings if we go through them properly, we've been taught from childhood they're bad. We've been taught to be stoic. We've been taught to be detuned. We've been taught to detune from those kind of feelings. This is why we have addictions, to help us avoid those feelings. And so our entire focus now is to avoid those feelings for most of our life, and then all of a sudden somebody's going, you need to feel that feeling. And it's sort of like, what? How can you suggest such a bad thing? You know, you're just some people have emailed me and said, I'm just I don't know the exact words, but they said like I'm morose and like I'm addicted to pain and suffering, things like that. They've said to me, you know. And I go, no, I'm not. But trust me, if you leave the pain and suffering in you, you are going to be. Yeah. All right. Have we talked about safety?
Yeah, for about 2 hours.
Yeah, interesting though, eh?
Yeah. So
interesting. You can make these. It's funny. You know, we remember when we listed off all of these things. When you first list them all off, you sort of go, I don't really see the point of that, but oh yeah, no worries. But after you start discussing, you go, geez, this is everywhere in my life. Like
that one was really off the top of everyone's head. We're only up to number 6. Oh yeah, make me feel safe. You just say that and move on to the next thing on the list. That's all I want from a parent.
Yeah, make me feel safe.
And then you realise what's involved.
You guys come up with it.
Yeah.
But how many times have you actually considered how much of an effect it's having?
No.
Just like huge.
Yeah.
And you'll find that with all of these things, it's having a huge effect on what you perceive God should be doing with you.
Mm-hmm.
Right, so the safety issue is God should be making me feel safe. And God's going, I've already done that. I've given you a safe universe, safe laws, everything's guided around love, it's beautiful. God's going, I've made you as safe as you possibly be. Your sin has made you unsafe. And not only yours, but others' sin too. This is why collectively we need to resolve sin. Yeah. Hello?
Just to clarify terminology for me.
Yeah.
When you said the release, indoctrination of teachings and pressure they cause, these are the pressures you're saying is like the pressure. Are they? I'm asking. Are these are pressures like that? We're not seeing how much they're affecting our relationship with God and how unsafe they're making us, and
how unhappy our lives are becoming because we believe them.
Yep.
You know, a lot of these beliefs we believe with total sincerity.
Yes.
But they're making us terribly unhappy.
Yep.
And also they're terribly affecting our relationship with God. They're making us believe things about God that you believe God should be doing. And so therefore you don't trust God. Because you believe God should be doing it and God isn't.
Yeah.
So most of you still believe your parents are more trustworthy than God is.
Yeah.
Like, which is, you know, if you think of it logically, it's like so far removed from the truth. You know, God has to be more loving than your parents are for lots of reasons, but most of us don't believe that. We're so fixated on the fact that there are certain things love would do because our parents did it.
Yeah, yeah.
And so we're fixated and we go, that if God was loving, that's what God would do.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I don't know how many times in my life, even when I was a Jehovah's Witness, how many times when I was knocking on doors and from people, I would hear the underlying question, one of the underlying questions was, if God existed, then why isn't he solving the suffering and pain on earth? And I'm going, wow, that, you know, that shows how much misunderstanding there is about what causes suffering and pain on earth. Because everyone's saying God should fix it. And I'm going, what? If God fixed it, we'd just go and create some more.
Yeah.
Like, it's so illogical to expect God to fix it. And it's the same with this safety issue. The lack of safety on earth is because humans created it. If humans hadn't created a lack of safety by sinning, there would be no lack of safety on earth. You'd be safe in everything you do. You'd be safe. And you'd be safe emotionally, sexually, physically, and spiritually. You wouldn't have any spiritual false beliefs. You wouldn't have any sexual false beliefs. You wouldn't have any emotional false beliefs. You physically would be completely safe. You would never be able even to do anything Because by the time you're a tiny little child, everyone around you is already physically safe. They're all. There wouldn't be any locks on doors. There'd possibly not even be doors, except for areas where you want to keep animals out, right? The way we've created life is because of the feeling that we're unsafe. And then the majority of us, when we first get presented with the idea or concept that God exists, one of the first questions we ask is, why isn't God solving the problems on this planet then?
Making me feel safe.
In other words, why isn't God making me feel safe? Yeah. Why has God, not... We admit to ourselves that God didn't cause the pain and suffering is what, there are people, of course, who don't even admit that they believe God purposely put us on here for pain and suffering for a learning process. What a... Horrible. Would you do that with your children on purpose? If you wouldn't do that with your children on purpose, why would God do that with you, right? So obviously God didn't do that, but that's what many people now come to believe in their philosophising about their pain. Rather than seeing that their pain is caused by sin, they'd rather believe that God wanted us to have pain to learn, right? Now that is you can see how much like bad feelings we have towards God in that statement, right? But on top of that, we've also got this underlying feeling, well, if God existed, surely he would, be solving the problems on earth. So for many people on earth, that's proof that God doesn't exist. Makes sense? Yeah. I've heard many atheists say to me, God doesn't exist because if he did, he wouldn't tolerate the pain and suffering on earth. And I go, well, that's not strictly true because you tolerate the pain and suffering on earth and you exist. So, even the logic there doesn't really match, but let's presume that God doesn't tolerate pain and suffering like you do. You've got to look back to what you would do if God rubbed it out. And all most people on earth would do is create more. Yeah. As is demonstrated by our life, right? Yeah. Good. Well, what's the next one?
Well, the next one's a doozy.
A doozy.
It's that a good parent...
We're up to number 7, aren't we?
7. Yep. A good parent treats me preferentially. Treats me as if I'm more important than others.
By the way, this particular problem is the reason why many people are overcloaked spiritually as well. So this is interesting. Do you reckon we need to have a conversation about that at some point?
Yes.
Great. Okay, so what we're expecting from a parent is they treat us preferentially. What does that mean? Charlie?
They'll treat me better than, say, another kid on the street or something.
Good. So because I'm their child, I deserve better treatment than somebody else's child down the street. Yeah, that's what we believe, isn't it?
Mum should treat you better than she treats Elias.
Yeah. And also an extension of that sometimes is mum should even treat you better than she treats herself. But we'll talk about that one separately. Because that's later in sacrifice, right?
That is.
But let's talk about this one where my mum and dad should treat me preferentially. Okay, so in getting treated preferentially, what am I being taught?
That I'm better than other people.
That I'm better than other people? From God's perspective, is that true?
No.
No, because God's perspective is I'm equal. Right? Not lower, not higher, equal. Okay, so not true from God's perspective, but that's really what it's saying. What effect does it have on me, though?
Makes me feel that I should get things, like that other people shouldn't. So it gives me a sense of entitlement.
Correct. So it makes you demanding.
Yeah.
Doesn't it too? Makes you demand things that you think you should get. Yep. Good. Anything else? Not just Charlie. If you get treated preferentially, what does it make you feel? Cecily. And then Sandra next to you. Superior, but Charlie already mentioned that, so.
I was going to say the same thing.
Yep. Tristan. And then down to Nina, and then across this way.
Special.
Special. What's the difference between special and superior?
I'm not really worried about how I am to other, how I compare to other people, but at least that I feel good about myself because I'm getting some special treatment.
Yep. What do we mean by special, honestly, though, like for Di?
I feel loved.
Yeah, for some of us, can you see, we don't want to be equal to others. We want to be a bit better than others because that way we feel like we're deserving of love more, don't we? Right? So oftentimes it creates this feeling that we deserve more than what others get.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Nina, you were going to say?
Yeah, it was along similar lines that I should be getting things that others don't get. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Sandra?
I'm just wondering whether it's also to do with like being adored, like being put not like on a pedestal, but for like just getting this, I don't know, just like a special feeling like of adoration or something.
Like a princess sort of.
Yeah, princess.
Daddy's little princess.
Yeah.
Better than mummy. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I adore all of you. So that doesn't mean I'm going to put you on a pedestal and not tell you the truth.
That's right.
Because often we think adoration means that you're never going to have a conflict, or you understand, which is not true actually. You know, not real adoration. God adores you, but he's okay if you're going to be in hell for a while.
So does that mean agreement is one of those things?
Sorry?
You just mentioned something like you won't tell me the truth, so I just wonder whether you would still tell the person the truth you adored, but I just wonder whether agreement has got something to do with it as well, being agreed with when you're superior or...
Yeah, well, why do you like being agreed with?
Yeah. It does make me feel special.
Well, yeah, but why do you like it? Yeah, it might make you feel special, but why do you like it? When somebody agrees with you, what does it mean?
No confrontation.
No confrontation, so that's helpful. What else does it mean? Jay?
It means you feel like you know stuff, like you're knowledgeable about
It does,
stuff.
but if you think about emotions, like feel the emotion of being agreed with. Yep, so come across here, Jada first and then Elena.
I'm getting validated.
You're getting validated. Okay, what does that make you feel like when you're validated? It makes you feel worthy, doesn't it? And it makes you feel like seen and known and yeah,
understood.
Interesting. Yeah. If God had to agree with you before God saw you, then all of you would remain completely invisible to God. Can you see that? Because God doesn't hardly agree with... You know, when we're in sin, God hardly doesn't agree with hardly anything we do, right? But he still sees us. Can you see if these are the requirements I have, right? So we've specifically focused on preferential treatment. If these are requirements I have in order to make myself feel things that I otherwise wouldn't feel, can you see that if God wants a relationship with us on our terms, it would be a pretty disastrous relationship, wouldn't it? Because one person be sinning in this way and God be, no worries, I agree with that. Another person sinning that way, no worries, I agree with that too. One person be sinning to harm the first person, you go, well, no worries, I agree with that too.
That's the main thing I get out of being treated preferentially, is that the rules don't apply to me.
That's right.
The rules that apply to everyone else don't apply to me.
That's right. That's what we believe.
That's the injury, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And that's a lot of the beef that a lot of people have with God. Like,
Yep.
don't you know, my situation is different.
My emotions are too hard to feel. So
it's
why
not
do you...
like everyone else.
Yeah.
Special case.
Yeah.
I'm a special, unique case.
Treat me preferentially.
Sorry?
Treat me preferentially. Give me special treatment. Give me preference over the others so that
Yeah.
I don't have to deal with this.
Now, with that expectation, how will you act? Thanks. Ange?
or you get used to it and you want it all the time and you demand it, you expect it.
Yeah.
You get upset when you don't get it.
Yeah, so these kind of people are very prone to anger and rage.
Yes.
Very much so. Yep. Sandra?
Does it make us feel arrogant, or makes us arrogant rather than?
It does.
Yeah.
It does.
And we have tantrums, don't we? Because we're like, what? You have to.
We'll be a law unto ourselves, basically.
Which is substantially what we want, isn't it? Mm. Very few first human injury, law unto myself. It's a big human injury, and we substantially want to be a law to ourselves. We don't want to be governed by anything other than ourselves. Mm-hmm. And this is an interesting distortion of free will, isn't it, in a way?
Yeah. Because
frequently our will conflicts with everybody else's will. And we want our will to succeed above theirs. Right? So that's very damaging. A person who's loving honours the will of others, but also honours their own will to the same extent. A person who's unloving says, I want you to do what I want all the time, and that's it. Mm-hmm. Yeah. The question, though, is how does that interfere with our relationship with God? Charlie?
Because then you put that expectation that you're going to be treated special by your parent, and then you expect God and other people to treat you special and favour you above everyone else. The same.
Yeah. Now, imagine you have that feeling and God doesn't do it. Mm. And then what are you going to be prone to doing, do you think? You have the feeling that you are special and that you're sort of like above God's laws, and you want God to treat you like as a unique case. Of course, God's not going to do that, but you still want that. So when you start trying to connect to God under those circumstances, what do you think you're going to be connecting to? You want to, Helena, thanks?
A spirit.
Who does what? What's the spirit going to do?
Is this going to the overcloaking thing?
Yeah.
They tell you they're God.
They tell you they're God,
yeah.
Right? And you're going to be very prone. They're making you feel special.
It's very special. Like, I'm God, I'm coming to talk to you. Yeah.
I'm God, I'm coming to talk to you.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not going to talk to your friend over there. Mm-hmm. I'm talking to you. And you're the one who can hear me, but they can't.
And actually, you have a special role here. Like a lot of that mission, that, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yep. Okay, now what does that do? Now you're bound not to God, but to someone you believe is God. What's that going to do to you? And you see how much that can potentially destroy your life.
Mm-hmm. Very quickly.
Well, the Spirit's controlling your life now, and now your chance of a relationship with God is almost nil.
Well, it's zero.
And what about your relationship with reality?
That's zero too. Yeah, that's zero too. So you're no longer seeing yourself as equal to everyone because you've got this spirit claiming to be God, or Jesus, if that's what you believe God to be, sitting on your shoulder talking to you. What are you going to do with that? Can you see you're going to do some pretty bad things with that? And
you're also going to lean towards people who have the same injury and have the same sort of relationships and addictions in there.
That's right.
That are just as damaging.
Yeah. So you're going to enter addictive relationships with people who make you feel like you're special.
That's right. And you're going to make them feel special in return, maybe an exchange bartering system, whatever. That can happen as well, right?
That can, but it's more likely that they're making you feel special. So what are you going to be attracted to? Let me just have a cough first.
Yeah. That's going to get addictive very quickly.
You're going to be attracted to people who you believe are weaker than you. And they are going to be giving you all this energy and approval, right? So you're going to set yourself up as a teacher, most likely, of others in that space as well, because you believe yourself to be superior. You're going to set yourself up as a teacher. That's going to make things even worse, particularly if you're teaching the wrong thing. If you're teaching the right thing, well, it's less problematic, but it's unlikely you're going to be teaching the right thing when you're guided by that kind of relationship, right? So what's going to end up happening is you'll end up absorbing all of this energy from people who believe themselves to be lesser than you, right? As we were talking about earlier, remember, with the safety thing, if somebody feels more safe than you do, then they feel better than you. If you feel more safe because you've got God with you, which is really just the Spirit with you, right? But you've got the illusion of God with you, you feel all nice and safe, and or you get all this energy from those spirits, and then all these people around you start thinking, wow, you're so developed and you're so amazing and we're going to come and see you. And they're not going to be challenged by you any time, are they? Because you're just going to feed them addictions. Because if you tell them the truth, they're not going to like you very much. So you feed their addictions, and that's how you get more energy from them. And so you'll feed their addictions, you'll get more energy from them. You'll be in a position of power. They'll be in a position where they feel lesser than you and they feel like they need you and all that kind of stuff. And then as that develops further, can you see, like, now you're sort of headed towards megalomania.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now you're in a state where you're basically only associating with people who treat you as if you're better than them. So you're never getting challenged. You're never growing. In fact, from a spiritual perspective, you're degrading significantly. Never getting challenged, never growing, never getting feedback, never getting anything from anybody. There's no one to regulate your behaviour. The spirits with you are propping up this behaviour, so they're not like God, who would confront the behaviour and say, "No, you're out of line." Their spirits are going, "No, this is really good. You know, this is really good. The more power you have, the more power we have, and we feel really good about all this, you know." And you end up in, you know, as a person, you can end up in a terribly dark place. Yeah, this is how people like Hitler have come about, Stalin have come about through these emotions, right? Gotten to this stage where they believe they're the arbiter of whole of humankind, even through their actions, through their evil actions, you know, and they do terribly evil things as a result. Yeah, and everybody just follows them. Yeah, because all those people feel themselves to be lesser than. You know, how did the whole German nation follow Hitler? They had to feel lesser than Hitler. Otherwise, they wouldn't have followed him, right? Yeah. So it's interesting. It's an interesting sort of a injury, really. Otherwise, and we want God to do this with us, like as if God's going to.
So it's like degrees of preference, isn't it? Because there's those people who obviously feel like Hitler, who they're super preferred,
yeah.
But we're all seeking the preferential treatment, aren't we, to some degree or another? Mm-hmm. But then but some of us also feel less.
This is the important point. God is trying to say, no, you are equal to everybody else. You do not deserve any preferential treatment from me.
That's right.
Any, not a single one bit of preferential treatment from me.
Yeah.
You don't deserve any preferential treatment from me. You're not going to get any.
Yeah.
It's what God's saying.
Yeah.
And your definition of love is, that's what my parents would do, give me preferential treatment. So this person who's telling me he's not going to give me any preferential treatment, it certainly ain't God, is what you think.
Yeah.
Because God would give me the same or better than what my parents give me, and they gave me preferential treatment, God should. And so in our own head we go, no, the spirits who are claiming to be God, they're gods, because they give me preferential treatment. So this is where I'm very prone to very dark spirit influence. But also I'm very prone to influencing others in this state as well. And then on top of that, I'm not going to hear God, because God's going, no, this is really wrong. Like all of my children are equal, right? Now, there's some of my children who have received more love, but it doesn't make them more equal as the what was the book called?
Animal Farm.
Animal Farm.
Some people are not more equal than others.
Yeah. So we are all equal from from the standpoint of worth. Yeah. Right? But we don't. When we're treated preferentially as children, we believe we're not equal in the standpoint of worth. We believe that some of us are more worthy than others. None of us are more worthy to receive God's love than somebody else. None of us. Right? We are all got the same worth from God's perspective. God wants to give us the same amount of love as he's given anybody else. And it's only we that we ourselves control how much love we receive. But God wants to give it, he believes us to be as worthy as anyone else. You follow? Now, when we want to be special, when we want to be, treated preferentially, we're basically saying to God, I'm more worthy to get your love than anybody else is. Right? Obviously not a truth. It's obviously one of the from God's perspective, it's one of the greatest sins you can commit to believe that you are more worthy than God's love than somebody else is. It's one of the greatest sins you can commit. How are you going to have a relationship with God while you have that? It's going to be impossible to have a relationship with God with that attitude, right? And this is why God does not respond, and this is why many of these so-called teachers of divine truth on earth are in abusive relationships with spirits and abusive relationships with people. Abusive relationships with spirits in that the spirits are abusing them, and they're in abusive relationships with people in that they are abusing people because they have this underlying feeling or attitude of superiority. They are basically saying to God that God doesn't want to give love to everybody the same amount, really is what you're saying. Because they personally believe God's given them more, God wants to give them more than somebody else.
I can see it like Christianity. If you're Christian, you get more love from God, you're favoured.
Correct.
If you're Muslim, you're favoured.
Correct.
If you're not,
every religious faith on earth believes this. If they didn't believe this, their religion wouldn't exist, actually.
Really?
Yeah. Their religion would not exist without them having an underlying feeling that a person or a member of that religious faith is more worthy than anybody else. Right? So, very dangerous emotional belief. Yep.
Can I tease this out a little bit?
Mm-hmm.
So, is it fair to say you're talking about just a general sense of superiority?
No, it's about wanting to be treated preferentially.
Preferentially. Because I was reflecting on, there's a couple of other ways that I think about this injury as well. And one of them is, say I, in my family, gained preferential treatment, but just in relation to certain things. Like certain things didn't apply or certain things were easier.
Mm-hmm.
But also, sometimes to get that preferential treatment, say from one parent or another, I had to do a bunch of things.
But now you're putting your personal inflection of your personal life in the mix. You realise that, don't you?
Yes, yeah.
Onto this treatment. See,
But I sort of see it for other people as well.
Yeah, but the average person who has preferential treatment to the extent that they can abuse others,
yes,
right, has mostly preferential treatment from their parents rather than not.
Yes.
So they're not in the state where you've been, where sometimes you got preferential treatment and other times you didn't.
Mm-hmm. And there was a high cost there was sort of a high
you
set
had to
of
pay a
other
price
demands
for the
preferential
for the preference.
Yeah.
Yeah. See, the person who has this to the greatest extent did not have to pay a price.
No.
They did not have to put out anything. They just they
were just favoured for existing.
They were just favoured for existing.
Yeah.
You're my child. Aren't you wonderful?
Yes.
You're wonderful by extension. You're my child. That's why you're wonderful.
Yeah.
You know, you're a Lytton Hitchens. You're wonderful. Or you're a
100%.
You're a Walsh. You're wonderful.
Yeah.
Whatever. And this underlying feeling that you're wonderful just because you belong to that family, and you're wonderful and you can do no wrong, which a lot of mothers have with their sons and a lot of fathers have with their daughters. Right? You're wonderful because you can do no wrong. Even oftentimes the relationship with the wife is, the wife does wrong.
Mm-hmm.
But my daughter,
exactly.
she does more right than wrong.
Yeah.
Right? She's more wonderful than my wife.
And this
she's better than my wife.
Yes.
Right? And the same goes for many women with their sons. You're better than my husband. You know, I've created you to be better than my husband. You know, you, because you're my son, you're better than my husband.
And I see that playing out, like even in this group, in relation to authority. So obviously in relation to God, where certain genders or in certain tasks or whatever are like, what do you mean? I shouldn't have to do that. Or what do you mean? I'm doing as much as the other people when they're not. But there's this sort of sense of there should be preference for me just by the fact that I'm
or even that I have some feelings to deal with. Shouldn't you make it easier on me?
Make an allowance.
Yeah, it's interesting how God feels about that. God goes, well, yeah, you got some feelings to deal with, and I shouldn't make it easier on you. You need to learn how to feel them. Yeah.
And I was also, because Elle said, you know, to one degree or another, we all have this injury.
Well,
but I think she means in relation to certain things, we do think we should be able to be let off the hook for certain things. Is that the same as what we're talking about here?
Well, that's another one on the list, being let off the hook. We're talking primarily here about preferential treatment, and what I'm talking about is primarily like feeling, where the feeling of the parents were, you are my preferred son or daughter.
Yeah.
You are better than the others.
And just better in general.
And you didn't have to earn it.
Yeah.
You didn't have to barter for it. You are.
Yeah.
You are better.
Yeah.
A person with that injury is often, and you can have it, sure, with one parent and not with the other. So you often see, for example, a man, the father is quite confrontational with the son, but the mother thinks he's the best son on earth. Do you know what I mean? And so you can have it with one gender, and that often plays out. So if the mother has felt that the son is the best son on earth, the best man on earth, and the father isn't, now the boy grows up believing he's better than his father and he's better than his mother. Right? So now he believes himself to be superior to his own parents, but also by extension superior to most other people.
Yeah.
Right? And as a result, it's going to be a very difficult injury to give up.
Yeah.
A very difficult injury. But what I'm saying is, it affects your relationship with God terribly, because God is saying you're equal, and you're going, no, I'm not. Right? You're going, no, I'm better. So a relationship with God, you're going to view as a pull down. You understand? You're going to view it as God pulling you down, and it's very hard for a person in that state to have a relationship with God when God is attempting to actually treat you as an equal, and you're attempting to say that you're superior. You're basically in an argument with God, right? And you're saying that God's saying for you to have a relationship with me, you're going to need to feel like you're not superior anymore. You're equal to everybody. And you're going, I don't want to feel that. Like, I am superior. How dare you suggest otherwise, is really what you're saying. And so you and God are going to be in direct conflict about one of the most fundamental things about humanity, and that is we're all equal. So how are you going to have a relationship with God where you receive God's love when you don't believe what God believes on that fundamental issue? It's going to be pretty hard, right? And this is why most people have a lot of blockages with God, because you can see already we're only up to what, number 7. Right? And we only
we're
remember...
already like, well, who's God? Where's God?
Remember, what did we do? We spent about an hour, didn't we, listing 30 issues. It wasn't very long anyway, from memory. We spent about an hour listing 30 issues off the top of our head about what we expect from our parents. We're up to number 7, and you can already see every one of the 7 stops us from receiving God's love.
Yeah.
Every single one of them.
It's like you're paddling, like God's at the end of the stream and you're paddling that way.
Yeah. And then you're going, why isn't God loving me? And you go, well, God's going, surely you can see why. You know what I mean? It's pretty obvious why.
Turn the boat around.
But the majority of us are going, it's not obvious to me, you know, because we've expected all of these things from our family, from our parents in particular. It's been indoctrinated we've been brainwashed, literally, like brainwashed into believing these things. And you could say it's not just a brainwashing, but it's an emotional washing, isn't it? Like our emotions are becoming broiled in it. Like it's not just a thought process, it's now all my beliefs and all my attitudes and all my feelings are involved in this. And so we're up to number 7, and already 7 areas where all of our feelings are embroiled. And then we're going, I pray for God's love, but I don't receive any. And the reasons why, if you think about it, are quite obvious. But most of us don't even think about it. Because we just go, no, this is normal. This is how it should feel. My relationship with God should feel special. Like I should be more special than everyone else. Now, you'll come to a stage where you feel that your relationship with God is special. But you certainly won't feel more special than anybody else. You'll feel like you're the pinnacle of God's creation, but you'll also feel like Phoebe is, and you'll also feel like Mary is, and you'll also feel like Charlie is, right? You won't feel like you're better than them in any way. Make sense? When you brought up with this emotion of I need to have preferential treatment, you then expect God to treat you preferentially, which also pertains to how God treats you with regard to law. You believe you're above it. You believe you're a special circumstance. You believe you shouldn't have to do things. So when God asks you to feel feelings, you go, no, I'm special, I shouldn't have to do that. Right? When God asks you to feel your sin and work through your sin, you go, no, I'm special, you should have forgiven me for that long ago.
Or I said I'm sorry.
Or I already said I'm sorry, that should be enough.
It hurts.
You know? If God's saying you need to feel your pain and suffering, you go, why? Why should I have to do that? That's what weak people do. It's not what I'm doing. Right? So then somebody else comes along claiming to be God, saying you don't have to do any of those things. You're going to say,
awesome.
Oh, you must be God. Yeah. I'll go for you.
You agree with me?
This God that Jesus is teaching me is also about pain and suffering. This other God is all about joy and happiness. And
I knew I'd recognise you.
I knew I'd recognise you. That Jesus character doesn't know what he's talking about, does he?
Morose. Yeah. Morose.
Yeah, he's all about the pain and suffering. This is why I get the emails, right, about being all about the pain and suffering. Because at the end of the day, the average person who believes they're special doesn't feel they have to feel pain and suffering. Not understanding that their pain and suffering is the cause of the majority of their sin and will remain so. It's a very hard emotion to get rid of too. Because most, like, when I look at my own family with my 2 sons, Tristan and Caleb, Tristan did not receive that feeling from his mother, right? He didn't receive a feeling that he was special from his mother. Caleb, my other son, did. And Caleb is in the state where he basically believes everybody serves him. Everybody does what he wants, right? And Tristan is almost the opposite state, where he feels nobody will, right? It's a very hard feeling to get rid of that you're special in comparison to other people. Very hard. And I've tried to address it with my son Caleb, but every time he gets really, really angry with me and won't talk to me for years as a result of it. Right? My brother feels the same way about me as well, that he's more special than I am. And I've tried to talk to him about it a number of times, and he's just like livid with me as well. So it's very difficult to ask a person to look at it when they believe the opposite. Very, very difficult.
Because they don't really see it as preferential, they see it as
No,
normal.
they see it's normal. Yeah. And they even see it as a good thing. Many times they know they're being treated preferentially, and they know they get away with things the other people wouldn't get away with on earth. And they actually say, I've heard many people say to me, it's a good thing. There's many people at our groups actually say, come up to us afterwards and say, oh, you know, I was living with this person or living with that person, and they let me do this and they let me do that. They gave me all these things, and I'm going, this is terrible. And they're going, no, this is God rewarding me for my... Now, how is God going to reward you by giving you preferential treatment? God doesn't do that. Right? And you're thinking God does. There's something wrong with you if you think God does. Like, why would God let you take things from other people without any responsibility for creating them yourself, for example? Why would God let you do that? That's not God. You believing that is like this spiritual New Age claptrap, you know? Believing that this is what a God would do with you, giving you this special preferential treatment at the denigration or the expense of others. And then at the same time you claim that you're equal? How does that work? You know? Yeah. Now it is true that if you live in harmony with the laws that govern God's universe, you get special preferential treatment from the law. Isn't that true? The law is basically saying, like, you're living in harmony with me, so now I'm going to support your life. It's also true that if you live in disharmony with the law, it's going to try to stop you from doing that. That's true too. But that's not God giving you preferential treatment. That's the law meeting justice, which is different than preferential treatment, right? It's funny how we often, you know, people say to me things like, oh, I prayed to God and my friend was saved. Does that mean that God doesn't want to save everybody? Prayed to God and I was healed. So does that mean that somebody else prays to God, like, they're going to be healed too? Is that what you think? Or is it you prayed to God and you were healed, so you're special? What do you think? Like, because if you think that, you weren't healed by God. Yeah. And God can heal you, but He's not going to heal you in preference to healing somebody else. Of course, there's the will involved in each person, and that does have an effect, and there's things like that. But quite often people misinterpret all of these things, and they say, oh, that means that I was special. And what Mary and I find is really interesting when we travel, because people go, oh, they stayed with us, so that made us special. How did it make you special? Like,
do you guys feel really special hanging out with us? Do you?
Yes.
You do? Yeah.
But how are you special? Like,
why are you more special than someone
you're no
who
more
doesn't?
special to us than anyone else.
Yeah.
Right? One thing that I do love about you is you want more truth than most other people do. So that's wonderful. And
We
God
enjoy
loves
that.
And we enjoy that, and God loves that too, by the way. Right? But that doesn't mean you're worth more than everyone else. Right? So when we go and stay with someone, we're not staying with them because we think they're more developed than everybody else. A lot of people who have worked with us in the past have felt that, like, oh, you know, we do video editing for them, so that means we're better than everyone else. No, it doesn't. It doesn't mean that at all. You just offered to do the video editing and we agreed. That's all it means. You know what I mean? Like, that's all it means. It doesn't mean anything more than that.
If something means more, Jesus and I will tell you, we're doing this for this other reason. Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's no, like, secret subterfuge of, like, honouring certain people. And,
But it's amazing how many people want it. Like, it blows us away sometimes how many people want it. Like, you know, Mary's doing this thing where we're organising trips overseas at the moment. Maybe, you know. But a lot of the people who we contact end up saying, why are you talking to us? Like, one of the questions is, why are you talking to us and not to other people about it? And we're going, here it goes again, this special treatment thing, right? We're talking to you because you asked us to. That's it.
It's not like...
Not because we believe you're better than somebody else. Not because we believe you're more developed than somebody else. We're doing it because you had a desire and we're responding. And that's it. You asked a question, so we're responding. Not because we believe that there's some future between us where we're going to have a special relationship and you're going to do special things on earth and you're going to be so special and we're going to treat you so preferentially. You know what I mean? That's how the average person feels. And it's so strange because when a person starts feeling that, we can't have anything to do with you now.
Now we need to address this.
Now we need to address this issue because it's out of line.
And this is where spirits get involved, and this is where it can all get very
dark and murky, very volatile
quickly, because what happens is spirits start to feed that feeling in the person that they're special and they're developed and they're this and they're that, and then there naturally comes a conflict between Jesus and I, and really the spirits with that person, and then it's a lot of pressure on that person then of who am I going to listen to? And if I'm already entrenched with these spirits who are feeding my addiction to feel special, it's probably going to be the spirits.
Every time.
And if then we're in their house when all that happens,
it's like a disaster.
Yes.
Oh.
No, I thought about me being subject to special treatment, but I think I confused it a bit about having a special or unique opportunity.
Well, you do, but it's an opportunity you created and we're responding to.
And it is open to others.
It's open to everyone.
It.
It's
Yes.
not because you're a special person.
Yeah.
It's because you desired the opportunity and we desired to respond. So a lot of people think that because we responded, it made them special. No, I'm sorry, it doesn't. We feel the same about all of you. Not differently about each person, because if we did feel like you're special, then we'd be in disharmony with God's truth,
God's feelings,
and God's feelings. Yeah, Eloisa.
I'm wondering, as you're talking about that, like in the corrupted sense, because we got some of us got so little attention from our parents that we're looking for the superior person. In the sense of we're going, I want attention from the superior
Someone
person.
you believe is superior.
Correct.
So a lot of people believe I'm superior, and I'm trying to tell them, no, I'm not.
Yes. Yeah.
Right? And they believe I think I am because I'm saying I'm Jesus.
Yes.
And many spirits believe I think I am because I'm saying I'm Jesus too. But I'm not.
Yes. Yes.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. I was just sort of thinking about how, like, there's all these dynamics in there, like, how have you been treated is what you're looking for, and then...
Well, it depends sometimes, doesn't it? There's two parts to being special, or there's two parts to preferential treatment. One is, I never had any as a child and I'm desperate for it now.
Yes, yes.
And the other is, I had heaps of it as a child and now I need it all the time.
Yes.
Now I'm entitled.
Yes.
So you could actually have no preferential treatment as a child.
Yes.
And still to be demanding it as an adult.
That's right.
Makes sense?
Yes.
Yeah. And you see a lot of this occurring in today's younger generation, actually. They're so... they expect preferential treatment all the time. Even in a family, you see it happening where mum and dad have to run around after the kids all the time. The kids are, the kids want to do soccer, so mum and dad have to take them to soccer. The kids want to do music, so they take them to music. The kids want to go somewhere on the weekend, so mum and dad take them. Mum and dad become their slaves. Right, so the kids actually believe mum and dad should be my slaves, and that's a very, very bad thing for a child to believe. By the time they're an adult, they're going to be looking for other slaves. It's not good, right? And it certainly is very damaging to their relationship with God, because God wants each of us to treat each other as if we're equals. And when you demand preferential treatment, you're basically demanding from other people that they treat you as if you're superior. And by doing that, you're actually setting up between you and God animosity. You are an enemy of God now. You're God's enemy. Yeah, you've set yourself up as God's enemy. Now, God doesn't treat you as your enemy, his enemy, but you have set yourself up as God's enemy because you're basically saying what God has defined is true and real. I am not going to accept. Right? That's what you're saying. And in doing that, you're basically saying that God's opinion of what is right and wrong doesn't matter. Now, how can you have a relationship with God and receive God's love while at the same time projecting that God that God's opinion doesn't matter. About his most precious creation, by the way. Like, his most precious creation is the human soul, and you are saying that God should have a better feeling about your soul than theirs. And yet God's most precious creation is the human soul. Do you think, like, you know, as the saying goes, that's not getting up God's nose? Or poking God in the eye, I used to say, in the first century. You know, there are certain ways in which you're poking God in the eye and you're saying, God should accept this. Yeah. And then you're saying, I should have a relationship, God should give me love. Because you believe you deserve preferential treatment, even to the point of poking somebody in the eye and they still love you. Right, that's what you really want. Right? And when I say poking God in the eye, it's not like God has eyes, is it? I'm just giving the illustration of something that's, from God's perspective, it is such a bad thing for you to believe that you're superior to someone else, that you deserve special treatment, because it creates almost all of the evil on earth, actually. Almost all evil on earth is created by that one feeling, that in some cases you should deserve better treatment than others, or that you are able to harm others because you're better than others, right? And those kind of beliefs destroy the relationship with God, absolutely destroy it, right? So how can you expect then to ask God for love and receive it when you don't love your brother? Like I said in the first century, go first, make peace with your brother. Yeah? In other words, love your brother. Mm-hmm. And then when you ask for God's love, you may receive it. Mm-hmm. Yeah? Mm-hmm. This is why when we notice between many of you, when you have little animosities with each other, you don't understand. You're not making peace between your brother. Now, God's got an issue with you. Mm-hmm. You can't expect to receive love from God while this issue exists. Yep. First resolve the sin with your brother. Mm. Now, of course, most sins with your brother are feelings, aren't they? Mm. They're feelings. So you're going to have to resolve it by feeling. Yep. You're not going to be able to just go, I'm going to treat you equally now. Mm. If you don't feel they're equal, how are you going to treat them equal? You're not. Yep.
I was just thinking that, like, because it's such a big sin for the people who've created it, such as myself, with their children. Mm-hmm. Obviously, I know we've been talking about this, such a big penalty in it. But also, again, when saying this, resolving it with your brother, I need to resolve that with my smaller sisters and brothers as well.
Your children, yeah.
And everyone else, because I'm...
So the way you resolve it is you deal with the emotion, and then you've got to... Then you will naturally start treating them equally.
Yeah.
Now, as you do that, what are they going to feel?
That you're bad. You're like what you've been talking about with God. You're bad. You're like out of here.
The worst person on earth now.
That's right.
Is probably what they're going to feel. And to be honest with you, not much you can do about it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Ironically, part of the reason you've done it is because you didn't want to experience any bad feelings from your children towards yourself.
Yeah.
And now
you're going to have to.
Compensation.
In the process of reparation.
Yeah.
Have it.
And until they have a realisation in themselves that actually they're trying to treat you unequally, it's not going to change.
Yeah. On their part, because I could.
Yeah,
change
you know, for most
part.
parents have ran around for their children, treated them preferentially, not other children, but their own. Okay. And so in the end, their own children are now believe themselves to be superior to their own parents.
Yeah.
So now when you're saying, no, you're my equal, how do you think they're going to respond? They're not going to go, oh, yeah, no worries.
Yeah. Was how I'm responding in a way to God too, isn't it? Like if you've got that injury, you're responding the same way with God and going,
I deserve things from you, you should be giving me.
That's right.
And they're going to do the same. Hey, hang on a sec. You've become a bad person now. What's this divine truth thing? Who's teaching you that? That's crap. They're going to attack you in so many different ways because you now are trying to just treat them as if they're equal to everyone else.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because you had the feeling before that they weren't. And now you've dealt with it emotionally. And they haven't dealt with it emotionally. Mm. They've still got the injury. Mm. So naturally it's going to be pretty difficult for them to overcome that injury. Yeah. And like I said, it's a difficult injury to overcome too. It's not like, oh yeah, have a little cry here and there and it's done. It's like it's going to be months of work, emotional work. And the average person who has the injury is not prepared for the emotional work because they have a demand that they're superior, they shouldn't have to do it. Like it's like, there's so many people in the hills who are there just for that one reason. They feel they shouldn't have to do the work that they can see plainly has to be done, you know, but shouldn't have to do it. They're superior. They should get away with not having to do it. And so they stay in the hills for... people have stayed in the hills for millennia with that feeling. It's not an easy feeling to give up. It's very difficult. So it's a very damaging thing to teach your children. It's a very damaging thing to believe yourself. Yep.
And Elle, can I just point out, you know, you sort of talk about the penalty in a past tense, but while you still don't want to change the injury, the penalty is still accruing.
Yeah, it's getting worse and worse.
It's not finished. You're still in it.
Yeah.
It's not something that's done. You are still
and
creating.
Your children can be 30 or 50. If you haven't dealt with it, you're still accruing the injury.
You're still making it. You're still adding to your penalty, but you're also supporting it in your children, which is part of what's accruing more penalty. But it doesn't make the work for them less or for you less. The longer you delay doing it, the more work there is.
That's right. Yeah. And it is true that your children, if you're a parent who has done this, your children are going to fight you on it. The injury is such that you've created the only potential is a fight.
Which is the very thing I was trying to avoid.
Which is the very thing I'm trying to avoid
exactly.
in any case. But
Exactly.
But it's not the only thing. You see, a lot of times we feel bad about ourselves as parents, so we want our children to feel superior to everybody. And so, you know, I know some people who basically have taught all their children that they're superior to them. Right? They've told them that you can do things I can't do. You can feel things I can't feel. You're better than me. You know, and they've taught them that. And so now the children are now adults. And let's say the parent now starts trying to see themselves as an equal and work through it emotionally and starts treating themselves as if they are an equal. The children are going to have meltdowns. Right? And they're not going to be pleasant meltdowns, as if there's such a thing. They're going to be really bad meltdowns, violent potentially meltdowns, right? Most of the violence on the planet are caused by people who want to feel themselves to be superior
or want
preferential treatment. So at the end of the day, it potentially violent meltdowns, you know, difficult to deal with. It's such an extreme injury. It's very difficult to deal with. It's funny, isn't it? Because a lot of us would have believed in the past that my kids feel good about themselves. Isn't that fantastic? But we haven't measured whether they feel good about themselves and good about everyone else. We've only gone, and often good about themselves mean they feel better than everyone else. And we haven't looked at that. We've only got, they feel good about themselves. Now God wants every child of his to feel good about themselves, but he doesn't want you to feel it in
neglect of others.
You know, he doesn't want you to feel better than others in order to feel good about yourself. Many of us, the only times we feel good about ourselves is when we feel better than others. Isn't that interesting? It's like it's so weird when you think about it. Why can't we both be good? Why can't we both feel good about ourselves? Right? Why can't you be good and I be good? Huh? But for some reason, and again because of this preferential treatment, we want to believe that when somebody else feels worse than us, then it means we're better than them.
So it's like competition.
It is so bad when you think about it, isn't it? Yeah. And what we want to feel is that I'm good, you're good. Right? We're all the same worth to God. We're all equal in God's eyes. Probably not that we're all good, of course, because that will depend on how much of the law we break, isn't it? As to whether we're good or evil. But we are all worthy. We've all got the same worth. We're all equal in God's eyes.
We're all adored.
We're all adored by God. Yeah. You know, and that applies to all of the spirits in the sixth sphere as much as all the spirits in the celestial kingdom. The main difference between the two is the spirits in the sixth sphere don't feel it. Because they're not open their heart to receiving that love. Right? That's the only main difference. But God adores all. There's a lovely message that I gave to James Padgett where I talked about one of the most damaging things a preacher could tell his audience is that because a person is not a believer, that he is not worthy of God's love. He is hated by God. It's one of the worst things you can tell anybody.
Yeah. Thank you.
Plenty of preachers get up on the pulpit and say that, though.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, guys. Well, that was not very productive.
Yeah, I think that was
very If we talk about covering points, because we're only at number 7 now.
We did 4 last time, didn't we? Or 3?
We did 5 last time.
5. We've done 2 today.
We've done 2.
We'll be here till the end of next year.
So the one thing I want to remind you of going through these points, and the reason why I feel it's really advisable you go through them again yourself and ponder about how it interferes with your relationship with God, how this belief interferes with it. Because most of us sort of believe that God should be the same as our parents were when they were good. And what we believe when when our parents were good is that, you know, they treated us in all these preferential ways and this superior feelings, and they gave us special treatment, and, you know, they only told us what they felt we could cope with, and they didn't make us feel much emotionally, and they took away our emotions when they could, and they tried to help us when we were crying, and, you know, we believe all of these things are really good, and that's what makes a good parent. And then you don't understand frequently how much that imposes the same demands upon God. And God's going, no, you might parent this way, but I don't. God's saying to you, no, the way I parent is going to cause happiness for everybody, not just happiness for you, right, in your addiction and in your sin, but happiness for everybody without sin, you know. And so the key is to go through these points and to question yourself about, like, how is this interfering with my relationship with God? We pray to God about it. Ask God, how is this interfering in my relationship with you? How is it affecting my desire to ask you for love? How is it affecting my desire to progress in harmony, like by having a relationship with God? Because a lot of times we're not aware of how much it is. And then we go, oh, but I pray and I'm not receiving anything. Remember the start of this conversation I said to you, the reason why this conversation has to be had is because many of us think we're praying to God, asking for a thing, but we're asking for the wrong thing. We're asking for God to treat us the same as our parents would have treated us, or what we believe a good parent would treat us like. That's what we're asking from God. And this is why frequently we don't feel God, because God doesn't want to treat us that way. Because God knows how damaging some of the things we're asking for can be to ourselves. Right? And I look back on my own life and I go, I'm so thankful, in this life in particular, so thankful that God didn't do some things that I wanted him to. Because if I got the thing that I wanted him to give, I'd be now a mess. You know, I'd be a destructive mess, not only to myself, but to my life, my family, my children, and also all people on the planet and the environment, you know. Like I was headed down the developer route, you know, imagine how much destruction I could have done there. I was headed down all of these things that I thought were good, right? And I'm so glad God didn't let me have them. In the first century I didn't experience that much, so I didn't really understand it as much as I do now, but now I sort of get it, like, man, God's got some good laws. It keeps you on the straight and narrow if you follow them, you know what I mean? And also helps you with your happiness as much as possible. A lot of the things we think we want are not good for us at all. We are unruly children demanding lollies, not realising they're going to rot our teeth and our gut, right? And cause us to be fat and miserable. That's what we're like. Yeah? We're unruly children, and it's so good that if you can connect to God and go, wow, it's so good that you did this with me. So good that you didn't let me have exactly what I wanted there. But, you know, God's trying to lead you through the labyrinth of your sin to perfection, is what God's trying to do. And we're going, oh, I really want this. And God's going, no, sorry, can't have that. You know, we're going, oh, I really want this. Oh, no, sorry, can't have that either. And by this stage you get to the no, sorry, third time. You go, F you, God, like, you know, I should be getting this. And so God's going, sorry, not getting that either. And I'm not listening to the F yous either. You know what I mean? Like, and you get like led to a place, if you're humble, you get led to a place where you start realising, because you're softened up emotionally, because you've gone through things emotionally, you get to the end of the place where it's so good God does things this way. You know? For me, for my life, for everybody else around me, their life. And then you start going, God's the best parent. Yeah? God's the best parent. He's not the mongrel parent that many of us sort of believe he is, like when we first sort of think about it. Yeah? He's got things under control. You know?
Thank goodness.
Thank goodness somebody does.
Yeah.
And then when people say to me, oh, you know, God's not participating, you know, in the pain and, you know, clearing the pain and suffering of the world, well, you really do not know God at all. Because, you know, if you look at all the ways that he's doing it with every individual, every moment of the day, trying to lead them to a place of sinlessness, you know, whether that is sixth year or having received God's love and progress beyond that, he's trying to lead us to a place of sinlessness. And he's doing that with each of you individually. He's interested in each of you individually getting to that place. And he's trying to do it in the best possible manner and tailor-made to you. And when you think about the effort that would involve for billions of children, you start to see God's interest, you know, like, and how intricate and involved it is in your life. But you have to progress a fair bit before you feel it, is what I found, you know. Man, at the beginning of this, you know, my process in this life, it was like from in the first century I sort of recognised these things quite early in life, but with all the injuries I carried from this life, it was just like, man, took some time to come to that conclusion. Working through things, working through the pain of it all, having the suffering, working through that, working through why the suffering, what sin I had was causing the suffering, why God didn't alleviate that for me, and why I had to deal with it myself. You know, it's been such a good process in that regard. Yeah. And also it makes you extremely aware. You become very aware of why, in any situation, what is the best loving course of action. You know, it's just easy to see everything clearly, the more aware you become. But to become aware, it took me ages just to become aware, like solid 15 years to start becoming aware. Really aware of what was going on, why, what laws were being broken, why that happened, you know, what was going on for individuals around me, why it was going on. Because you have to clear away a lot of your emotional baggage to get to that stage. And that God wants you to do it, and God will help you do it, and God's leading you through, like I said, the maze of your sin. He's leading you through it all. Here's your next one, here's your next one. He's presenting you with the next most important thing, the next most important thing that will open you up, the next most important thing. And he's doing it tailor-made for you, which is another demonstration of his care for you. That it's tailor-made for you and not just like, oh yeah, those 100 million people have that problem. Let's do the same thing with them. That's what we do, right?
Yeah.
But no, God's not like that. Everything's just perfectly tailor-made for the individual. Even your guide's tailor-made for you. You know, it's all tailor-made for you. Even your whole life right now, as you're experiencing it, is tailor-made for you to have the best way forward to get out of it.
Yeah.
It's really quite interesting like that.
So amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
You just deal with what is right in front of you right now.
Yeah, in a loving manner.
Yeah, in harmony with God's way.
Yep.
It's the quickest route to happiness.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. It's powerful like that. Okay, guys. Well,
thank you.
that's it for
Thank
today.
you.